Chapter 121. So yeah. Can you help? Heh. Considering you discovered it? I don't see any issue. Especially since if we can share the energy records out there, hopefully other regions can find their own moss rock. Kukui offered. It was the next day and after an early evening since I was tired from all the adventure I had run straight to the Pokemon school before class was set to start. Phew. That's a relief. I think I gave Pinery a heart attack yesterday. Oh, that's the lady in charge of the EV Evolution Lab in Kanto. Ah, yeah, I know the type, obsessed, right? She has her hair styled like a Glacian. I said deadpan. Pfft, he burst into laughter at the idea. Anyways, so should I send it, or? Here, you said you have their number? I'll go ahead and reach out to get the best way to transfer the data over, and I'll do it myself, just to make sure there aren't any issues. Kukui. You're the best. Like literally. Favorite. I said, pointing at him, and he lit up into that boyish grin of his. Ah. Thanks, Vicky. You're a real flash yourself, you know? I just rolled my eyes at his move usage. So what's the plan for today? If you have the time, the kids would love to see a Leafeon. He tempted, and I grinned a bit. I was planning on just enjoying an easy day. I'll ask Mama if she wants to stop in. I'd appreciate it. I'll keep the schedule flexible if you decide to. I'll try to get her to show up, but Mama might be just interested in relaxing today. If not, maybe another day. Sure, just let me know. Go on then, I can see you practically vibrating. Have a good day out there. I will. Alola. I charged out of the office Kukui had in the Pokemon school and then ran through the halls. Hee. I wasn't a student, no detention for me if I ran. I burst out onto the steps and then jogged out across the dirt fields past the Tauros racing track and then back onto the lovely Alola. Eventually I slowed to a walk, and checked the egg. Strapped to my chest it was just fine, but I still ran my hands over the incubator as I moved as if that could comfort the baby inside. Noodle, when you get born you're going to have so many friends, aunts and uncles, and a whole big loving family. I can't wait for you to join us. But take your time. Whenever you are ready. I whispered to the egg. The Alolan sun above was so bright, it filled everything with a golden glow. It was no wonder everyone loved these islands so much. Is this just going to be a new thing? I asked Papa as we both were literally overcrowded from around Mama. It's so cute. I never thought I'd ever see a new EV type. Look at its little face. Cabbage was apparently getting quite a bit of attention from both the Alolans and the tourists. Why didn't my Pokemon get so much attention? I had rare cuties too. Sure, I guess EV were popular with everyone. I pouted as even some of the little kids that were surrounding Mama had EV that were happily barking at Cabbage as he blissfully ignored the world still laying sprawled out on Mama's lap. Meowth I noticed was resting on the back of the chair near Mama's shoulders and glaring down. Heh, dark types. Jealousy was part and parcel. Either way Mama seemed to have things well in hand, and she was being gentle with the kids that were oohing over her Leafeon. It was cute, if a little annoying. How about we go get some food, and we'll drag your mother away to eat once we get back? Sounds good. I agreed and Papa winked at me as we all headed off. I released Riolu so she could walk beside Lucario and chatter away as I did the same with Papa. So you were going to visit another island? Uh-huh. Honestly. So. You don't have to believe me, but I think Glacian evolves the same way as Leafeon, but with an ice rock. I want to check the snowy areas on the island to see if I can find it. Ho. Gonna overturn all EV research in one vacation, huh? Hee. I just giggled at Papa's remark. Alright, you'll need some winter gear. I still have the outfit I wore to the airport. Oh, that's right. He muttered, stroking at his chin that was a little more furred than normal. He'd been really being lazy on the vacation if he was growing a bit of fuzz. We continued to chat about everything and anything as we walked, hitting one of the restaurants that we'd taken to going to and then ordering food and carrying it back. Lucario and Riolu both helping, and Riolu being on good behavior in front of her mama meant we made it back, where mama finally waved the crowd away and we all finally got back together. Mama's popular. Pfft. It's the overboiled cabbage that's popular. Who knows why, considering how much of a lump she is. Mama remarked, but she was very pointedly, I noticed, carrying cabbage in her arms. The little derp had a content smile on her mouth as her eyes were closed and she seemed to be half napping. What a lazy Pokemon. I released everyone and helped everyone get a nice meal. As I settled Brave into a nice plate with her own meal, I looked over and watched a new interaction. Dratini, having looked over everyone eating, noticed that only Cabbage wasn't actually eating. He tilted his little head cutely, and then bent down picking up a berry and slithering over the table. Cabbage was still just laying out sprawled on the table where Mama had dropped him, like. Well, a cabbage to be honest. He was happily just laying around absorbing sunlight when Dratini slithered over and dropped a berry in front of her. Dra. Dratini. He offered, nudging the berry until it was right in front of Cabbage, but she just ignored him. He looked around a little concerned, before I laughed, getting his attention. Cabbage is a leafy on Dratini. They eat sunlight. As long as it's a nice sunny day, she doesn't need to eat. And doesn't seem to like to. She's fine. Come here. I urged him over and he trailed over, still looking over concerned, until I cupped his cheeks in my hands and brought our foreheads together. Teeny. You're such a sweetheart. It's okay. Cabbage will eat if she wants, but thank you for trying. I told him and his purple eyes looked into mine. I pressed a kiss to his forehead, and he giggled cutely, before surging up, and then I was laughing as he pressed little Dratini kisses all over my face. That tickles. I cackled as he attacked me, and I nearly fell off the chair laughing. But soon he settled in wrapping around my shoulders and we all settled in to eat. Thankfully even Gibble was chomping on berries instead of rushing to the ocean. Although that was only a matter of time. Oh well, a nice ocean day instead of tromping through forests sounded really nice. An easy casual day capped off with another visit to Clonmark Hill had me sleeping in the next morning, but as I woke up I already knew I had something I wanted to do. Ulula Island. There were a few interesting bits with the island that I wanted to explore, but the real one was Mt. Lanakila, the only icy area in Alola. And I knew there was an ice rock somewhere in the snow in Alola. I couldn't remember exactly where it would be, or even if it would be in the same spot from the games, but if I assumed it was here, that meant I just needed to find it. Find an ice-covered rock in the middle of the snowy mountaintop. Couldn't possibly be that hard. I was lying to myself to stay positive about it, because I was not looking forward to it. I grabbed my Kanto clothes, warm and toasty, far too toasty for Alola, and put them into my bag before heading out, a quick breakfast for my team, and I went to go find Mama and Papa once again. Can you watch over the egg? I'm going to Ulula Island, and I might be climbing all over the mountain. Might be a bit too cold. I asked, and both my parents looked at each other with that look of two people already knowing what was going on. What? I'll watch the egg. Mama offered, and reached for it. As I handed over the incubator, I noticed Papa standing up and grinning at me. What? I'm coming with. He declared confidently, and I looked at him. Huh. He even had a bag with him, and I recognized his jacket hanging partially out of it. Rockruff nuzzling his face into the bag cutely as he explored something new. Okay. Haha. Papa gets an adventure too. He called out looking at Mama who just rolled her eyes. Yes, yes, have fun you too, don't get frostbite. I'll be careful. I said and grinned as Papa was already grabbing his stuff, and with a whistle Rockruff sat up at attention, just like the Growlithe back home. Had Papa already started training Rockruff? I hadn't even noticed. Let's move. He called out and Rockruff barked happily as Papa marched off. Should I tell him the ride station is that way? I asked, pointing in the exact opposite direction. Oh no, give him his moment. Mama said a bit darkly, with a sinister little smile on her face. Then she pulled up her book and stretched out. Meowth and Cabbage both happily sprawled out around her. Fair enough. Looks like Mama was going to make a quiet day of it. Welcome to Ulula Island. I called out as we stepped off the lappers at the ride station. The old woman that ran it smiled at both Papa and I as he looked around curiously. Okay, so I was looking around curiously too, but I was technically a Alolan, so I got a pass. Definitely. Looking around the city we were in, Papa didn't seem super impressed, but at least he was interested. So now we get some ride Pokemon, and head out. I want to see if I can't find that ice rock. I muttered firmly to myself. That would certainly cause some havoc, but it was important. Alright then, Trouble. I'll follow your lead. Papa replied, dropping a heavy hand onto my hat from behind, which I let him do for a moment, before swiping at his arm until he removed it. That's right. To adventure. Hopefully with less trouble than last time. Heh. We walked to the other half of the ride stall, and since Papa was here, we ended up on two Stoutlands that seemed amused at Rockruff chasing after their heels yipping happily. We were off, heading south out of Malier City and heading along the main road around the island. Mt. Lanakila had the main road access to it from the south, so that's where we were going. Thankfully, with the Stoutland, we made pretty good time running down the road and Papa seemed to really be enjoying himself, looking around as we raced each other. What is that? He asked as we hit a crossroad, and I looked at the sign before giving a little noise. Ah, that's the desert. A desert? Here? Yeah, it's a little pocket on the island. Weird. He muttered, and looked sort of interested, but I pointed. Papa. Mountain. I reminded him and he looked to the west, and saw the massive mountain that dominated the entire island. Oh yeah. He whispered, nodding, and I urged Stoutland on. We can always check it out later. I called out and he shook his head. Forget it. I just thought it was weird. Let's check this mountain of yours. Hee hee. We continued on, the Stoutlands happily chasing each other down the road as Papa and I kept breaking into races with each other. Then finally, as I was left behind, we came to another crossroad, Papa waiting for me, looking smug at winning, as I glared and grumbled at him. It wasn't fair. His Stoutland wanted to run faster, and mine slower, for him. He hadn't even been around these dogs for more than an hour, and already they were happily helping him defeat his daughter. Which was cheating. You okay? I didn't expect to look behind me and see you so far behind me. Cheater. I pointed a finger right at him, as I urged Stoutland past him and checked the signs. Route to Mt. Lanakila. I breathed in and out. It was time to get nice and co. Hey Papa? Yeah, what's up? I need to make a detour, before we head up the mountain, okay? He blinked a little confused at my tone. Vicky? What's wrong? Not wrong, but there is somewhere I have to go first. I said, looking at the sign. It was a bit worn, like it had been out here for a while, but it was shiny, almost fancy, like they expected it to be well maintained. And the southern cross of this crossroad was something I couldn't ignore. Thrifty Megamart. I'd always planned on going there, and well, here I was. What's a Thrifty Megamart? A mistake that the Alolans built. I told him. What does that mean? It means that the Alolans have to deal with legendary Pokemon in their day-to-day life in ways we don't, and a while back they made a big mistake. Come on. I urged Stoutland off and I raced down the road. Hold up. The path thankfully wasn't too long, the road bent, and then as we crossed through some jungle, there it was. A large building, a really huge parking lot, that still had construction equipment rusting all across it. And this was it. I slowed and trotted Stoutland right up the main road, the almost eerie quiet of the store surrounded me. There wasn't even Pokemon noises. No birds chirping or anything. Just silence. This place is giving me the creeps. What's going on? The Megamart was built, without the approval of the island Tapu. When they found out, they went on a rampage, and the entire site was abandoned. I explained to Papa, who instantly looked much more concerned. What? We should get out of here then. No, it's okay. I said, rubbing at the back of my head a bit. The locals don't use the store, but Pokemon do, and there is even an island trial here sometimes. I explained, which is when I slipped off Stoutland. The dog was looking around, not seeming very pleased at the atmosphere. It's okay. Just rest here for a bit. Do you need some water? I offered, and he nodded, so I took a moment to set out a bowl and filled it with some bottled water I had. Papa joined me, as we settled the two big dogs. So, why do you need to come here? He asked, as I reached for my belt and released my little buddy. Kukuyuke? Hey Mimikyu. Welcome to the thrifty Megamart. The #1 home to Alolan's ghost-type Pokemon. I explained to Mimikyu and Papa. What? Wild ghost types? Papa said, sounding like he was going to start clattering his teeth almost. I looked at him almost surprised. Yeah? We should get out of here then. Ha 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 ha. He laughed weakly as he looked around as if expecting a ghost to appear right behind him, which was actually a good idea. Papa. I need to meet the totem Mimikyu. Mimikyu gets a special Z crystal that I need to earn. I look down at Mimikyu and smile as he leaps into my arms, looking rather excited at the idea. That's right. I want that Z crystal, so I can show everyone our bond, okay Mimikyu? Kuwaku. Right. I'll just wait here. Right here. In the daylight. You should just stay out here too. Papa said, squirming a bit as he moved close to me and pulled me into a hug of sorts, still looking around. Are you afraid of ghosts? No. Of course not. I went to Lavender Town on my journey, I learned how to deal with them. Step 1, run away, preferably screaming. Ghosts find it funny, and they'll usually be too busy laughing to chase you. I blinked, and then couldn't resist bursting into laughter at such a silly statement. Papa. What? I'm being serious. That's so funny. What if the ghost Pokemon wants to be your friend? I prefer living, thanks. Ghost Pokemon aren't like that. What about Mimikyu? He's a ghost type? He doesn't go invisible or pass through walls. And I haven't seen him trying to kill you or someone else. Kuke. Yeah. Mimikyu wouldn't do that. Jengar do. He said flatly. That's an old wives' tale. They do not. Isn't Gram friends with Agatha? Shouldn't you be better about this? It's because I've been around Agatha a few times that I know to run when wild ghost types are around. Papa shivered, and I just couldn't help it. I'd never seen this side of him. Scaredy dog. I declared, pointing right at him. What? I'm not. Scaredy dog. Papa's a scaredy dog. I teased, laughing as he continued to, I realize now, hide behind me while trying to pull me away from the store. I'm not a scaredy dog. He defended, pouting at my words. Then let's go inside. Test of courage. Test of courage. I repeated, taunting, and Papa puffed up, definitely looking like he didn't want to deal with this. I'm not scared. He grumbled at me, reaching over and tugging my cheek. Twinquom inch wide. I said, laughing, and then finally broke his cheek grab, laughing and dancing out of his arms, all the way to the front of the store. Then I grinned evilly. Holding Mimikyu in my arms. I grinned nice and evilly. Come inside, Papa. Everyone just wants to play with you. That is not GGG. He instantly broke into a stutter, and I nodded, reaching into my bag. Then just as Papa was about ready to start screaming, I turned and stuffed a berry right into the haunter's mouth that had been appearing in the shadows of the store right behind me, trying to mess with Papa and me. Hi. Let's be friends. I offered, even as the haunter gagged a bit on the berry I'd stuffed right into its throat. Then it blinked, surprised at me, before bursting into laughter. Haunt. It cackled as I grinned up at it too. Then, because I was feeling bold, I reached out and grabbed Haunter's hand, which definitely startled the poor thing. Show me around? I asked, and the Haunter looked from its hand to my flesh, and it was lonely too. Haunt. It cheered happily, still laughing as its disembodied hand pulled me along inside, making me giggle as the Haunter was still where it was left, teasing Papa with a nice tongue wiggle. Vicky. Come inside, Papa. I yelled back, still laughing as I was led deeper inside. Guess it was time to play. Chapter 122. I laughed in delight as Hunter dragged me around a corner, and then suddenly he appeared through the shelves jumping out at me, and wiggling his tongue while his other hand held his mouth open. Pfft. Ha 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 ha. That's so funny. I told him instantly, and Hunter sort of pouted a bit. Cuckoo. Mimikyu hissed, scolding the Hunter that instantly rubbed at the back of his head with his one free hand as if embarrassed. You did startle me a bit, so good job, I'm just not afraid of you at all. Hunt. He gasped, sounding a little offended, and I just laughed even louder, noticing that it got the attention of more ghosts, a ghastly already peering down at us from the shadows above. There's nothing you can do. But if you want to be scary, you shouldn't be so friend-shaped. I told him, squeezing his freezing cold hand that I still held tight in my grip. Hunter blinked and then grinned wide. It looked sinister, but the way he was gripping back on my hand told me it was purely in delight. Show me around? I asked him, and he grinned happily as he started tugging me. Vicky. Over here, Papa. I called out, looking back around the shelves. Papa had entered the store with slow, careful steps. Okay, Vicky, just stay close, Vicky. Hunter. I laughed as I'd been tugged along, vanishing around the shelves, and Papa called out for me as I'd no doubt just vanished as Hunter started yanking me along, giggling as he seemed to realize if he couldn't scare me, he could always scare Papa. Don't be too mean to my Papa, okay? I asked as I was dragged along deeper into the shop. Haunt? Haunt, haunt, haunt. He chuckled sinisterly, and I laughed along with him, but tugged back a bit. I'm serious, he's nice, but he's just a little scared. Let's not make him too scared, okay? I pleaded, as I threw my best baby doll eyes at Hunter, who looked back and sort of melted. Almost literally too. Heh, Hunt. Thanks, Hunter. Not saying you can't mess with him a little though, okay? I said, holding up my fingers to show just a little. Hunter looked at me, and slowly grinned as he brought his other hand up and did the same thing. I nodded. He nodded. The pact was sealed. Sorry, Papa. Wha? Hey. Papa screamed from behind us, and I just giggled as Hunter did the same. And then I wasn't alone. Ghastly peeked out from behind a shelf, that I sent a bright smile, which it returned with a much more sinister one, and other ghost types were around. A jingling beside me had me look up and notice a Klefki hovering over to see what was going on. Hi. I greeted them both, and Klefki jingled around in delight. Well, what is that? Vicky. I'm just dying a gruesome death, Papa. Nothing to worry about. I called out, and there was silence for a moment, as Hunter and Ghastly started breaking down in laughter, as Klefki shook around, seemingly a little confused about why I had said that. Ghastly. I was urged on, so Hunter and I followed as the Ghastly brought us around the shelves. I was wondering what was going on until I heard Papa walking to where I'd just been, his nervous shuffling pretty loud. Ghastly grinned, and Hunter shifted me into place. Right where a hole in the old shelves let me see through. Hi, Papa. I said, and he looked over, and then suddenly everything went dark. Ew. I groaned, making sure to exhale, as I was shuffled along, and I could hear Papa scream a bit. Haunt, haunt, haunt. I could vaguely hear until I reached up and firmly popped Ghastly off my head. Only once it was away did I wipe a hand around my face to make sure air circulated. That's gross. I told it firmly. I could feel it spit on my hair. Gas, gas, gas. It laughed just as evilly. That was probably too much. I told Hunter, Ghastly swallowing my head and then making me disappear was probably a bit much for Papa. I'm okay, Papa. It was just a prank. Don't breathe in the poison gas. He yelled back, and I rolled my eyes. Like, duh, Papa. I'm fine. Yet as soon as I said that, my hand was grabbed once more by Hunter and I was tugged along. Kuyuyuku. Mimikyu hissed a bit at Ghastly, and Hunter sounded like he was getting annoyed by these two. It's okay, Mimikyu, we're just playing a bit. I assured him, but he just turned a bit on my shoulder and sent me a look. Kuwakuk. You think it's time to stop? I asked him, and he flopped his disguise back and forth, nodding firmly. Okay, hey Hunter, Ghastly, let's meet back up with Papa, okay? I don't want him to get too freaked out. Gas. Ghastly. Ghastly seemed to refuse, getting a bit irritated. I'm not saying we have to stop playing, but we should stop playing pranks on Papa for a minute, let him catch his breath. Gas. It refused, shaking its head and glaring at me. Then its smile grew more sinister, and it opened its mouth, which was instantly filled with a Milotic-tail wooden hammer threateningly. Mimikyu was glaring. I could practically feel his sinister intentions as he held the tail right in Ghastly's mouth with real threat. Haunter. Haunter reached out and pulled Ghastly back and then to my delight patted me on the head. Gas. Haunter, haunt. He was denied, and Ghastly puffed up for a moment before. Gauze. It started crying, like full-on fake crocodile tears. What is that? Papa called out. Gauze. He continued to fake cry and I was a bit confused, looking at Mimikyu who looked just as confused. Then I looked at Haunter. He was looking around, and then I realized. Oh. I muttered, as I started preparing, and just as I expected, there was a cold wind through the store and the shadows shifted, and moved. Jengar. A voice hissed out creepily, and I shifted to turn around. There on top of the shelves was a Jengar, glaring down at us. Gauze. The little brat cried and flew up to Jengar, and was definitely telling a lie to make it angry. Haunt. Haunter haunt. Haunter cut in arguing back, and I watched as the two Pokemon spoke as Jengar's eyes shifted from everyone, but it never stopped that sinister grin. Surprise! I yelled suddenly, before anything could be done, and Jengar choked, as between my yell and quick throw the sherry berry had gone right into its mouth. Gung? Gen-ak. It suddenly choked and grabbed at its tongue, yanking it out of its mouth, unraveling the very long tongue, as I started laughing. Sherry berry were spicy. Want something to drink? I offered, holding up a bottle and grinning as it flopped down onto my level and swiped the water bottle, harshly ripping it right out of my hand, and started washing its mouth out. Heh, got you. I told it, earning a sinister look as it continued to wash out its mouth, but instead I held out an Orin. Something to cool that tongue? Gung. It swiped that berry and started chewing. Then my face shifted into a sinister grin and Jengar stilled. Geeing. It shouted, mouth once more aflame. I'd been holding both an Orin and a sherry berry, knowing it would swipe both after how it had acted with my water. Wahahaha. I cackled and the other Pokemon laughed along with me. Haunt haunt haunt. Gas gas gas. Coo 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 coo. Sorry. It was too tempting to do. Here. I offered another water bottle and just an Orin berry this time, and soon Jengar was bent over gasping as its mouth cooled down. There you are. What is going on? Papa asked, watching the Pokemon around me warily. Gung? That's my Papa. He's scared of ghost types, but look how brave he is. He came running in here to save me. I offered and then looked at Papa, who did look a little pale, but the funniest part was Rockruff. The pup had literally leapt into Papa's arms and had his face stuffed into Papa's neck. Scaredy pup. Ruyuo. Rockruff made a howling noise, but refused to actually look. I knew instantly what was going to happen. Despite just pranking him, and I'd probably suffer for that later, Jengar and the other two ghosts looked over at Papa and grinned sinisterly. I just rolled my eyes and stepped forward, reaching out my hands to snag Haunter, and Jengar's hands in my own, surprising Jengar enough it nearly jumped out of its skin. Papa. Meet Jengar, Haunter, and Ghastly. Ghastly is a crybaby. Gas. Haunter is super cool, and Jengar. Well, they're fun. I decided, sending the Jengar looking at me in surprise, a wink. Jengar. It offered, suddenly laughing hilariously as all that tension was now gone. Right. Nice to meet you? Papa spoke, with obvious discomfort, and I just grinned at him. These are my new friends. I explained, and Jengar and Haunter shifted to look at me, before grinning. Papa just looked at me, before sighing, slumping a bit. Of course they are. Teehee. I grinned as my new ghost friends cackled at Papa. Vicky. Not to cut this short, but what are we here for? He asked, more tired sounding than scared now. Oh right. I looked at Haunter and Jengar. Hi. I'm here to see if I can talk to the totem Mimikyu. I want to earn a Mimikyu Z crystal. I explained and both Pokemon made a noise, but we were all interrupted. Kukeki. A voice cut through the entire store and I shifted to look. On top one of the shelves was a Mimikyu, wearing a tattered Pikachu costume. I blinked, looking from Mimikyu to Mimikyu for a moment. Mimi big. That's a chonker. I decided and the entire store went silent at my words. Gujin Jangar. Jangar started howling, needing both hands up to his face just to stem his laughter. Kukekek. Mimi big questioned, looking a little confused, as it jumped down, and Papa actually relaxed a bit? I guess he really wasn't that worried about Mimikyu anymore. Hi. I'm Vicky. Oh man, your disguise is a little beat up, isn't it? I asked as I moved over and sat down, which still put me nearly face to face with Mimikyu. Seriously, this totem Mimikyu was like twice as big as mine. Kukeku? Kek. It responded back in what I took as a greeting as Mimikyu jumped down and the two Pokemon sized each other up. Kek? Kukeku. The question and answer was obvious as Mimikyu shifted and straight up power posted, showing off his work with Milotic disguise. The shiny scales actually glittered a bit in the light streaming in from a shelf. Kukeku. My buddy demurred, but it was obvious totem Mimikyu was super interested in my boy's cool disguise. Hey buddy. We still have lots of supplies in here, right? I asked, patting my bag, and Mimikyu nodded. I grinned as I opened up his personal pocket that I'd given him on my back that was full of cloth and supplies. Hey Mimi big. Want to upgrade your disguise? I asked, and grinned at the positive gasp I got. Mimikyu nodded, shifting a bit and looking serious, as he suddenly moved. Oh, he was going to really help Mimi big with the full disguise, huh? Well, both of them working together should get the job done a lot faster. I held out the pocket in my bag to make it easier, and just helped pass things to Mimikyu when needed. I think it looks great, I said as Mimi big showed off its new and improved disguise. It wasn't a Milotic or anything, still having the Pikachu disguise, but instead of faded torn yellow cloth, the cloth was a bright cheery yellow. They still didn't really get the face right, I mean it still looked like a Mimikyu. I wonder if that was a weird instinct thing, since they all tended to look the same, or... You guys are definitely cheating, Papa said, and I glanced back. He'd gotten bored, and even his fear of ghost types had faded as the three ghosts hadn't done anything bad once Mimi Big had shown up. So he'd gotten bored and pulled out a deck of cards of all things. I don't know if teaching a trio of ghost types how to play poker was a good idea, but it had certainly calmed things down. Even if Haunter and Jangar were helping Ghastly with its cards, and were cheating rather badly each time, well, all of them were cheating. Gung. Jangar. Jangar growled, pointing, and Papa put on a faux offended look. Me? Cheating? Never. He said as he blatantly, while making full eye contact, pulled out a card from his sleeve and put it into his hand. Gee. Jangar burst, with the sound of a breaking balloon falling backwards and just kicking its feet in laughter. Yeah. Suddenly a voice spoke, jolting me badly. Huh. I looked over my shoulder and relaxed. The girl standing there took in the whole situation with a curious look on her face. And then, what a cutie! I couldn't help but gasp as a Mimikyu floated up over her shoulder. Kik. Kuk. Oh, I think you're the best, of course. I reassured Mimikyu as I picked him up and settled him in my lap as I turned. We both looked each other over. Two trainers, and there was a tension. There was only one choice. My Mimikyu dash. My Mimikin's dash. Is the best. We shouted at each other, fingers pointed, and there was no doubt both of us would fight over this fact. But of course only I was correct. Mimikyu makes his own super disguises. Look at his Milotic disguise, made with real Milotic scales. It was everyone who has ever seen it, his disguise is literally artisan level. None compare. Oh yeah. Well, my Mimikin's is a super special best Mimikyu. She died and still came back for me. Huh. That's it? I've already promised Mimikyu we'll be together forever and ever. Wha? You. That's nothing. I've made a promise like that too. We glared at each other, as our Mimikyu looked back and forth at the two of us confused, before we both instantly broke into bright smiles. I love your Mimikyu's little bow. It's so cute. And she's a real ghost. How sweet. She never wanted to leave you. Aya. I love your little Milotic disguise. How amazing. I never even thought of getting a different Pokemon disguise for Mimikins. We both nodded, as I rose and stepped forward, hands instantly shooting out, and we shook. The Mimikyu Alliance has now begun. Woe to all those who besmirch the glory of the Mimi Cyute. Oh, and look at you. She gasped, looking behind us at the totem Mimikyu. It perked up and made a similar show-off pose that Mimikyu had done early. I quickly cheered and started clapping, and the girl did the same. I don't remember having 2 daughters. Papa said, interrupting the cheering, and I laughed in delight at his words as he walked over. Hello? It's Alola, Papa. Oh right. Alola, Alola. I'm Acerola. Oh Alola, I'm Victor, this is Victoria, my daughter. Just call me Vicky. I offered, and Acerola nodded, pleased. Well, I'm Acerola, an island captain. Nice to meet you. I came because I noticed something was going on, but it looks like you're just here playing with everyone. Yep. I agreed. Papa really shouldn't have taught them cards though. I added, looking at Papa like he messed up. Wha? I was bored. He argued, and Acerola and I both laughed. Well, I came here because, well, I wanted to see if I could earn the Mimikium Z. I explained, and she blinked, her eyes widening. Oh. You don't have one yet? Hee hee. Not yet. But you and your Mimikyu. That's weird. I'm not from Alola. I've known Mimikyu from outside Alola. I explained, and she tilted her head. Mimikyu can be found outside Alola? Uh-huh. A few places. I also found a group of Kamou. Apparently there was a pirate group from the mainland that came to Alola a long time ago. That's terrible. But the Kamou are still doing okay. But maybe the Kahuna will try and bring them back. Or offer them a choice to come back. They've been where they are for a long time. I guess that's up to the Kahuna. So you don't have your Mimikium Z? Well, do you think she's earned it? Acerola asked, tilting sideways as she looked at Mimi Big. Kukkekekekee. It offered cheerfully, and I had a moment's warning before a big Mimikyu landed on my shoulder. Thankfully it was still pretty light, so I didn't get knocked over. Instead I did the only thing I could, grin really brightly, because 2 shoulder Mimikyu. 1 chonker. This was the best. I reached out to both and pet them. With my buddy I even went under his disguise to pet on his head and feel his tendrils wrap around my fingers in greeting. Heh. You even touch him under his disguise? Course. You can't pat someone on the head through a shirt. I said plainly, and Acerola smiled brightly as she nodded along. Kikekiki. Mimikins called out, definitely laughing happily. And just a moment later a large shadow claw slipped out of Mimi Big's disguise and waved at me. I held out my hand as the Z crystal was dropped into my palm. Are you sure? No battle or anything? I asked it, and it shook its head. Keek. I suddenly felt 2 shadowy arms wrap around me. Mimi Big. Don't do that, or you'll make me cryyyyyy. I whined as I hugged Mimi Big back with all my strength. Kukkekekeko. It said quite cheerfully, as we hugged. Ah. So cute. Acerola called out, and I just had to grin. Feeling the new Z crystal in my hand. Heh. I was going to be a real shock for. Eh? Gung. Jengar. It called out cheerfully, as I reached up on top of my head and felt the crystal that had been dropped into my hair. Gostium Z, too? Gung. Thanks, Jengar. I really appreciate it. Gung. Wow. I've never seen these bunch be so quick to hand over their Z crystal before. You must be great with ghost types. Acerola offered, smiling happily, and I just shrugged. I only have Mimikyu, but my grandmother is friends with Agatha and Kanto, and so I've been around her Jengar and stuff. Oh, I've heard of Agatha. She's amazing. Amazing? Papa whispered, obviously having a different opinion of Agatha. Acerola and I just laughed. Chapter 123. Bye-bye. I yelled out behind me as we walked out of the thrift megamart. I love you. I called out watching as Jengar, Haunter, and Mimi Big all waved goodbye at me, Acerola standing beside them waving with mimikins. I'm kinda surprised. Papa spoke as we trotted off on the Stoutlands. About what? I asked, still looking behind me and waving. You didn't capture that Haunter. You seem to get along well. Oh. I went silent and I felt my smile get a little brittle. Yeah. Vicky? He's one of the totem helpers. He helps take care of things. He's got a job. All official like. Acerola mentioned it. Haunter is kinda wild, but kinda a kahuna Pokemon. It's complicated. Apparently the Jengar belonged to one of the kahuna, and helps out with stuff here. Huh. Sort of like an old gym Pokemon. They sometimes are set out to control wild Pokemon that can be dangerous. Yeah. I sighed. Would you have captured him? He was cute. I admitted as I reset myself to the front of the Stoutland. So yes. Papa said laughing, and I just shrugged. I already had a lot of Pokemon at the moment. Between my original team and my babies, and not even counting the dozens of Milotic, and all the gummy. But it'd have certainly been fun. But I shook it off. It doesn't matter. He had his job, helping Jengar, and he's comfortable where he is. Come on. I shouted, urging Stoutland on, grinning as we sped past Papa for a moment before once again the Stoutlands proved themselves to be traitors, and Papa soon caught up as Stoutland started slowing down purposefully. You're the worst. I told the big dog, but his tail was wagging as Papa spoke to both dogs, telling them what good boys they were. Evil. Finally leaving the thrifty megamart long behind, we once more came to the crossroads, and I hurried north. Come on, Papa. We gotta explore the whole mountain. I don't think we'll get a whole mountain done today, but we can check it out, no need to rush. He yelled back at me, but I was urging Stoutland on as we raced up the road, which very quickly turned into a dirt path, and then barely a path at all. Up we went, up a path that wound back and forth climbing up the mountain, until, suddenly we were in the snow. Stout. The dogs barked at each other happily at the cool snow on their paws, but Papa and I were already starting to shiver. Hold here, Stoutland. I called out as I slipped off and shivered at the ice around my feet. I opened up my back, and started pulling out my winter clothes. Pants went on first, right over my Alolan summer clothes. Then I had a heavier shirt, and a jacket, and even had my big clunky boots instead of my flip-flops. Papa was slipping into his clothes too, and soon some cold weather adventurers were here. Ready? Yeah, let's tackle this mountain. Ha ha ha. He laughed, pointing forward, and the Stoutlands both danced around like happy dogs at Papa's command. And then we continued on, climbing atop Stoutlands and making much slower time as the snow started picking up. The paths up the mountain grew wider, I noticed, but even more full of snow. This was supposed to be the actual road, but I didn't see any actual roads. I wonder if they even bothered with cars to get up to the top. Wasn't there an observatory at the top? What is that? Papa suddenly cried out, and the Stoutland both shifted, ready to start charging at Papa's words, which was doubly funny, since what had caused the shout was just a sandshrew. Alolan sandshrew, instead of being a ground type, it's an ice and steel type. I explained, even as the sandshrew heard Papa's shout, and seeing two big Stoutlands staring at it, like they were ready to hunt, and squeaked cutely and charged back into the snow, digging away from the danger. It looked weird. Wait, steel and ice? Yep. Its armor is as hard as steel, they actually can't roll up like Kanto Sandshrew. I wonder if they still try, and if it looks cute, I bet it does. Heh. Can't roll up? That's Sandshrews' best trick. Well, with tougher armor, I guess it doesn't need it. Maybe. Papa offered, but unlike me, who thought they were super cute, he didn't sound very impressed. I just rolled my eyes and continued on, as Papa caught up. Alolan Sandshrew, that's so strange. They have executors as well, they're super tall, and dragon grass types. Weird. He laughed as he must have imagined them. But that was a good point. I kept my head on a swivel and kept looking around. Would I get super duper mega main character energy lucky, and find a Glacian too, that could lead me to the Ice Stone? Probably not. But I wasn't going to miss it by not looking around. As we headed further and further up the mountain, we spotted a few more cute Pokemon. First, a group of Snorunts gathering snowballs for whatever they had planned. They noticed us through the trees and just gathered up the snowballs they'd collected and started rolling them off, until we were out of sight. Then as we came up to a curved section through the rock, spiraling around the mountain, a group of Sneasel were hanging out along the ridge, poking their head out and watching us move past. I had a feeling if we were less strong looking with two Stoutland carrying us up, they might try and jump us. But we made it past that group, and then on the mountain paths. Snow covered everything and it was fairly chilly, but the Alolan sun was still strong, so any time we were in the sun, my jacket would heat up almost uncomfortably before we'd pass through some trees, or around a bend, and cool down again. Continued around, and yet, while there were plenty of rocky sections on the mountain, and even some pine forests, we hadn't seen any actual caves. I don't see anything. I finally mentioned as we stopped for a break to let the dogs get some water and snacks while Papa and I stretched. It's a big mountain. Yeah, but no caves at all? I know they're here. Maybe the trails avoid them. Caves tend to have Pokemon in them, especially in a place like this. Papa said, and the more I tinkered with that, the more likely it seemed. Then, we need to go off the trail. I decided and Papa just shrugged. Sure. His acceptance was a relief, and once the dogs were ready to move out, we turned away from the trail and out into the deeper snow. Working together, the two Stoutland pushed through the snow, switching front position from time to time, as there were places of really thick snow, but we passed through forests and mountain climbs. While there were plenty of Pokemon around, it wasn't nearly as dense as it felt in the jungle. Most Pokemon we found were in groups, and disappeared, or watched us pass without breaking eyesight. But then along the cliff face we found it. A large cave sank deep into the mountain, and I shot a look at Papa who looked just as excited as we stepped off the Stoutland. You boys should stay here. Papa offered, but instead both dogs shook their heads and nudged up to Papa and I guess we were going to have company. Papa just laughed, reaching out and giving both dogs pets with each hand. Alright, you can come with, who knows, we may end up leaving the mountain through another exit. So you'll be a big help. Stout. One barked, puffing up proudly, while the other was still nudging Papa's hand for more. They were cute. But soon Papa got them ordered up. Mimikyu still on my shoulder, and Rockruff for Papa, we headed deep into the cave, and I actually had to stop for a moment to get my flashlight out, only for the first shift in the tunnel to end up in an already lit room. It's beautiful. I whispered. There was an almost icy moss that covered the walls, the entire cave glowed white. Yeah. You got your camera? Oh sure. I pulled it out of my bag and handed it to Papa, but he grinned and dragged me closer before shifting the camera in front of us and after a moment snapping a photo. A selfie? Selfie? I just want a pic for your mama. She was teasing me about all the interesting spots she saw on your adventure, but now I got a really neat one to tease her with. Papa was grinning like a loon, and all I could do was just roll my eyes. Of course. I'll take that back, thank you. I grumbled, taking my camera and putting it back in my bag. Come on, let's look around. You said you wanted to find this ice rock, right? Yeah. If it exists, it'll be somewhere on this mountain. Probably inside it. I muttered, looking around. The tunnel led to this cave, and it was big. I could see different sections of the cave from here, and it spread rather wide. It even had walls of ice on some parts of this room, which meant there could be rooms hidden behind the ice. Well, we can spend the day, but we aren't going to be here all night, so let's get moving. It's chilly down here. Papa decided and I nodded. We headed out. Our 4 Pokemon kept an eye out as we moved deeper into the cave, mostly just picking a random direction, although Papa stopped and had Rockruff scrape along the walls as we walked, giving both a scent and visual trail for us. That's really smart. It's something you learn while traveling through MT Moon. Or it should be. He said, sending me a judging look. I went through a mountain. It looks like a giant skull. It was full of goo and stuff. He said judgmentally, and I puffed up and glared at him. It was a cool mountain. Sigh, my daughter, missing out on cultural touchstones. What am I going to do with her? He said, even literally saying sigh just to hammer it home. Oh, excuse me for being the smart one and going over the mountain full of Zubats ready to attack anyone that disturbs them. It builds character. Back in my day we went through MT Moon both ways. Pfft. No you didn't. I scoffed and Papa sent me an amused look. We could have. Didn't. I sing-songed, but then stopped. What is that? I asked, looking at the wall. There, scratched deep into the stone, was 3 cuts, a claw mark that trailed deeply into the stone. What the heck made that? Pokemon move, you don't recognize it? No, I don't think there's anything on the mountain that would make a mark like that. I whispered. Of course I only vaguely at best recalled the game, but… Sneasel, and Absol? Maybe a Sandslash? That was about all you could find on the mountain that would leave anything like this, but none of them had 3 claws. Sandslash and Sneasel only had 2. Absol 1. I shook it off. A cut that deep wasn't something I'd want my baby teen to face, but… I looked at Papa. There were 2 of us, and we had Pokemon including the Stoutland. Not that they were battle Pokemon. On top of that, Papa did have Lucario. I don't think there was much down here that Lucario couldn't beat up. I think we keep going. If we run into anything bad, we'll jump on the Stoutland and run away. Papa said confidently, and I nodded showing him I totally agreed. I wanted to find this ice rock. No matter what Pokemon were down here. We moved on. Mimikyu kept a good eye out from atop my head. We followed a mostly flat path, up and down. It split off from time to time, sometimes the path would open up and show a large cave, but we'd be high up from the ground floor of that one. Pokemon were down here too. I saw a lot of Sandshrew, Zubat as well. Papa always walked real quietly past when we spotted them. And then the path we were on opened up fully, coming up into another large cave. This one was cold. Massive pillars of ice that glittered and seemed to amplify the light from the glowing moss filled the room. What a place. Papa said looking around, and even the Stoutland and Rockruff were looking around as they took in the view. But I was focusing less on how beautiful it looked, despite wanting to take a picture, but on the scratches along the ice. More of those massive 3-clawed scratches, but much more. Something was grinding against the ice pillars, like sandpaper on ice, scratching it up into a white blur. Pokemon used this room, and often by the looks of it. I took just a few steps towards one of the ice pillars when my foot didn't quite come down correctly and I nearly ate shit on the icy ground. Vicky? I'm alright. I groaned. My foot had slipped out from under me, and I was halfway through a splits. I shifted until my feet were stable again. There in the ground, in the ice, which was actually hard to make out in the light of the cave, was an imprint. Wait, I recognized this, I think? A big round imprint in the snow with a weird print in the center. What Pokemon did this? What is that? I'm not sure, it's right on the tip of my tongue though. I muttered, staring at the weird print in the ice and rock. Then we heard it. A strange noise in the air that echoed around the cave strangely, a constant high-pitched noise that also… Is there something grinding up ice? Papa asked, and I blinked as I finally managed to place the noise, something grinding up against ice, rapidly. Like a saw cutting through ice. Let's find out. I decided and Papa nodded as we moved on ahead, passing around the pillars and through sections of the cave that literally had no floor, just ice spread out across an expanse from one side of a cave to the other, with a massive split going through the rock in the center. but the ice was more than thick enough to support us all. Then I started seeing it, spraying ice all over the place, and as we got closer, the light finally let us see. Oh, it's sandshrew. I muttered. They were literally grinding up against the ice using rapid spin, literally spinning up to get speed and power before hitting the ice pillars and grinding them down. What were they doing though? There were a dozen sandshrew, each of them picking a pillar and grinding up against it, seemingly over and over. Papa and I hung back, even as Rockruff was down nearly on his belly looking ready to charge in but waiting. The two stoutland just watched from behind us. Mimikyu was where I got the warning. I felt him jump off as the noise of a cracking stone and something blurred out of the rock beside us, intercepted and beaten back. Sand. Slash. The evolved Alolan Sandslash squeaked out a warning as it regained its feet from Mimikyu's blow, knocking it back. Whoa, whoa. I said even as Papa moved to attack. We aren't here to fight. We won't bother you, or your family. I explained, but Sandslash wasn't listening. Its claws were raised and gleaming. Rockruff. Ruff. Slash. There was definitely a battle. I'll leave it to you then, Papa. I'll watch our back. I called out and did just that. Keeping an eye on the battle, as Papa called out for a rock throw and the battle began. Ugh. Some Pokemon didn't want to listen, especially since we were so close to their family? Pack? What was a group of mouse called? I shook off the silly thought and focused up. Mimikyu was already jumping back onto my head to keep an eye out, and multiple sandshrew were already moving over. Their cute little waddle as they couldn't roll up was super adorable. But I stood in their way. Easy. Easy. We aren't gonna hurt your friend. A crack of rock on ice echoed out behind me. Probably didn't sound truthful. We're just gonna battle them until they calm down. My words unfortunately didn't seem to be working. The sandshrew squeaked at each other and readied for a battle. 3 sandshrew had approached, and now it was 3-on-1. Ugh. If I had my big boys, this wouldn't even be an issue. Mimikyu, stick to evasion, and Shadow Claw. Only use wood hammer if you have to, I don't want you getting too injured. Kook kook. He agreed and leapt forward right as the sandshrew did. They spun up into rapid spin, but normal type move. Mimikyu basically ignored them, just slipping around the attack and smashing them around with Shadow Claw. Then seemingly realizing their move wasn't working, they each jumped back and inhaled. Shriu. They shouted in unison, and a wall of snow seemed to surge forward. Mimikyu leapt, dodging, bouncing out of the walls of snow, but 3 attacks was a lot to dodge, and as he shifted, they did too. Powder snow. The move shifted up and Mimikyu cried out in irritation as his Milotic disguise was slammed into, and as he landed, some of the scales were covered in ice, and the disguise looked a little rough. Kyukyukyuku. He shouted angrily and then charged in. Oh, he mad. They tried it again, but this time he darted past them, and even as they turned, slightly hitting each other with powder snow, he just used their bodies as shields and soon all 3 sandshrew were laying on the ground squeaking. Slash. I turned. Papa and Rockruff weren't doing quite so well. Rockruff was young, and Sandslash was strong. But the Stoutland had stepped in, and Sandslash looked less willing to fight both of them, which meant it noticed me knocking around the sandshrew, and suddenly jumped away from Papa's battle. Vicky. I see it. Go. I shouted out. Instead of calling on Mimikyu, Riolu popped out. Vacuum wave. I called, and Riolu acted as the large Pokemon was charging at her. She was getting better. There was no charging period, she simply pushed out both paws and the wave of energy and wind blasted out and into the leaping Sandslash, knocking it back and sending it skittering. Good hit. I called out, and the Sandslash must have thought so as well. It was super weak to fighting type moves after all. Okay, let's all calm down. See? I offered, reaching into my bag and pulling out some oran berries. I let it see what I was holding before gently dropping the berries near the sandshrew. We aren't here to fight you. I said again, softly, showing that I had no interest in a fight, or in them. And slowly the Sandslash shifted from me to Papa back to me, and then instead of fighting it started shuffling sideways. I realized what it was doing and moved along with it, away from the sandshrew that were waking up groaning, and towards Papa, as we switched places, leaving the sand slash in between me and the sand shrew. Riolu looked ready to keep fighting, seemingly pleased at the strength of her hit, but I reached out and tugged her along, which she did follow. See? No need for a fight. I continued, and its claws jerked a bit, but it wasn't looking aggressive, as it definitely wanted us away from its kids? Who knows? Alright. Let's just check out wounds, and move on. Papa decided, and I nodded, not taking my eyes off the sand slash as I backed up until I was fully away. Riolu looked super happy when Papa reached out and patted her between the ears though. Okay, I have some potions and stuff, no worries. How's Rockruff? A little beaten up. He fought well though. Didn't he? Papa asked, and Rockruff, looking a little more scuffed and favoring a paw, perked up at Papa's words. His tail even started to wag. It didn't take long to spray his wounds down, yet despite his full heal he still gave Papa big puppy eyes and looked injured until Papa picked him up, and then he manically snuggled into Papa, rubbing into him, which probably was a little painful for Papa, but it was obvious Rockruff loved Papa. As he was rapidly trying to lick his face and rub against him. Ow. Ow. Bleg, that was my mouth. Ow. Papa repeated as Rockruff wiggled against him. Do you have to do that? He asked the pup. Actually, yeah. Rockruff rub up against things they like. The more they like you, the harder they rub. That checks. Ow, out. Papa confirmed, and I just laughed a bit. Riolu. Riolu grumbled, as she was shooting. Looks like she wanted to be picked up too. I just rolled my eyes at her, and reached out, patting her on the head just like Papa. Good job. Rio. She scoffed, but didn't move away, I noticed. We should keep moving, maybe move past the sand slash so we don't bother them anymore. Papa said suddenly. I looked up and noticed the sandlash was still looking at us, locked on and ready to defend. Yeah, let's go. Chapter 124. Circling around the sandshrew area, we continued on our path. The tunnel we took leading away from that cave was odd compared to the rest. Darker, I needed to pull out my flashlight as there was no moss on the walls. A new tunnel? I wondered as we moved, and I almost startled as Papa spoke. Definitely. Something carved this recently. Look, you can see the condensation forming frost on the ridges of the cave. This isn't an onyx cave or a golem. Alolan golem are electric types, they're more often above ground or in magnet-rich areas. Electric? Yeah. The whole line is different here. Weird. Papa said, chuckling a bit. Seriously, every time I turn around a Pokemon I thought I knew about is something weird. That's Alola for you. I said, then thought it over. Or rather just the world. Regional forms aren't just in Alola. Pokemon adapt to their environment, which sometimes leads to weird results. Yeah, I guess so. Papa said, sounding a bit wistful. What's wrong? Nothing, Vicky, just the world changing around me, I guess. He shook it off and we continued forward. Once more we broke through, and this time into another bright cave. Although it wasn't quite as crazy as the Sandshrew cave, it led into a cave utterly covered in tunnels. Just looking around I spotted 12, most of them halfway up the cave walls, with massive claw marks leading from and to them. One of them was just beside us at our entrance, and I walked over. The claw marks. The same 3 clawed marks I'd seen earlier, massive, and utterly carving into the rock face. Steel type? I could see something like an Agron making these marks, but they weren't native to Alola. Right? If it was, I wanted to make friends with it. I always thought they were cute. Vicky. Papa said, voice tight, we need to go. Now. His voice was spooked, and I turned. Papa? Come on. Now. I know these markings. A tunnel like this. He urged, and already started urging the Stoutland back to the tunnel we just made it through when we both heard it. Rock scraping rock, and the thumps of heavy footsteps. Get on. Papa ordered, and despite my own resistance, I hurried to do as he said. What could have Papa spooked that much? We didn't make it into our tunnel, because that's where the noise was coming from, but we both noticed that too late, as we turned, and right there, coming out of the dark cave was Tyranitar. It rumbled, more like rocks smashing together than a normal vocalization. A Tyranitar. Onalola. Vicky. Run. Papa ordered, and he kicked the Stoutland into urgency, and we took off. My Stoutland following at first without any control from me, until I got the reins and got him in order. I flinched as crashing rocks slammed into the earth behind us, but, Papa, it's just a Tyranitar. We have Lucario, and Mimikyu could probably do some damage just on his own too. Woodhammer was a grass type against a rock. But Papa was ignoring me, just urging us onward until we found another tunnel, this one well lit. I turned as we curved in, and the Tyranitar was chasing us, roaring and looking angry. I think us running through this cave, probably its nest made it even angrier than anything else. Oh well, too late to fix that. We scrambled into the tunnel, thankfully this one was well lit, and we raced ahead, although the noise of stomping heavy weight behind us continued to echo after us. Wow. I really didn't expect a Tyranitar. I mean, I know you can find some Larvitar on one of the islands, but I don't think it was this one. Just keep going. Papa yelled back, although I noticed he kept looking behind him to check on me. Oh, he was really freaked out. Poor Papa. We burst out of the tunnel and ended up sliding a bit, as the Stoutland found the floor mostly ice. As they scrambled, we sort of fell into a snowdrift, which was odd until I looked up, wind blowing gently over the entire cave, as the cave we were now in was actually more like a giant strip ripped out of the side of the mountain. Snow and frigid mountain wind seeped through and blew up snow drifts, but there was also sunlight, and because of that, there were actually trees and bushes growing in this area. Unfortunately, the edge leading off the mountain was a sheer cliff, so we were still in the mountain tunnels network if we wanted to leave. At least not without a flying Pokemon. Should have brought Dragonite or something. I muttered to myself, a bit irritated at how this had gone. Running away from Pokemon like this was sort of embarrassing. But I guess for most trainers this was sort of the norm. It was a good experience. Mostly telling me that I didn't like it. Tyran. A roar behind us had me turn to see the Tyranitar charging up the tunnel. Shadow Ball Mimikyu. Let's try to slow him down. I called out and just continued to hold on as we charged away on the Stoutland with the angry Tyranitar on our heels. We were running when I felt it. Mimikyu gripped tight and started calling out. Kook. He shrieked, and I turned. Dodge. I roared out, shifting the Stoutland to the side as Tyranitar hadn't decided to just let us escape. A boulder, incredibly sharp, had been pulled from the ground and launched forward. Stone edge? The entire cave felt like it shook as the rocks hit, and it wasn't even over. The Tyranitar was charging forward, moving a lot faster than I would expect for that Pokemon as it sort of scrambled on four legs, and as it moved sometimes ripping out the boulders and tossing them forward. And each time the entire cave shook as the pointed rocks smashed into the snow and bit deep. Then suddenly, everything sort of shifted. What? I couldn't help but wonder as while I was looking forward the entire cave sort of shifted. Then more and more. Avalanche. Papa cried out, and he turned Stoutland back right to me, and nearly ripped me off the other Stoutland's back to wrap himself around me. Rockruff jumping through the snow got a shock as the ground under him started shifting. The ground of the cave had just given up, and snow, previously piled high enough that the Stoutland had to fight through it to rush us forward, started shifting, pulling us straight towards the cliff. Really wish I had Dragonite or Blue Heart right now. Hold on. Papa cried out, and really what else could I do, as the snow yanked all of us right off the cliff and out into the open air. Coo. I startled at the call as snow was pulled away from my face. Hey pal. I whispered a bit and Mimikyu was there, along with the sunlight. Coo. He shouted happily and rubbed at me for a second before disappearing, and then I heard more snow getting pulled apart and Papa coughed a bit. It took a second for my brain to remember exactly what just happened. I startled and pushed, getting myself pulled free of the snow. I hadn't been knocked out, I think, but the rush of everything just sort of blurred into falling and snow. Vicky! Papa, I'm here. I'm okay. I called out as I started yanking myself free of the snow. Thankfully Mimikyu had found me. When I pulled myself out I looked around. then up. Wow. That was a drop. I whispered, looking at what had to be 100 feet above us, the cave we'd fallen from. Thankfully, it looks like the cliff hadn't been as directly down as I'd thought. I'm fairly certain we'd mostly rolled down the mountain. Rock rough. Papa called out, and I instantly shook my confusion away as I rose up. Stoutland. Rock rough. I roared out as I got up. I didn't see them. Papa. Lucario. I yelled out and I rushed over to him. He was half upside down, but I helped get him up and Lucario was released. Lucario. She called out, no doubt sensing all the trouble even in her pokeball. Lucario. We need search and rescue. Papa ordered before I could, and to my surprise she nodded and started looking around and in seconds ran off. Riolu. I released my own Pokemon and she looked far less confident as she looked around in shock at the devastation. Help Lucario. I ordered and thankfully she turned and ran straight to her mother. I helped Papa get out of the snow and only once he was back on his feet did I get a chance to look him over. He looked roughed up but, "You okay?" "Fine. You?" he demanded, looking me over and even kneeling down and putting hands on my shoulders and face to check. "I'm okay," I assured him. Lucario. We both looked up and then rushed over. Stoutland's paws were in the air out of the snow and we shifted to help dig him out as Lucario moved on. Both Stoutlands were fine. Big fur, and tough bodies, they weren't that bothered by the avalanche. Rockruff ended up the deepest, needing Riolu and Lucario to use moves to blast the snow away. Once we actually managed to free him enough to breath, the poor pup whimpered and only stopped when Papa fully had him out of the snow and in his arms. That sucked, I decided to say for everyone as I watched the poor pup whimper. Yet even as we all started to relax, Riolu perked up and barked. Lucario's ears twitched one and she was off, along with Riolu. Crap. There must be other Pokemon. I called out and darted after them. Hey! Don't run off. Vicky! I'll be with Lucario. We have to help. I roared back. If a Pokemon was in danger, I couldn't just ignore it, and this was our fault. Lucario thankfully was fully on it. She was already digging at the snow, and as she worked a Sandshrew was revealed. The poor thing looked a little dazed, and fully startled as Lucario pulled it free, but then she just moved on, leaving it sitting in the snow. Shrew? It whispered, confused. I was running right past it to stick with Lucario when I realized. Sandshrew are great diggers. Hey, the avalanche would have trapped other Pokemon, I said, slightly out of breath. Please help us. Lucario can locate any of the trapped Pokemon, but she isn't good at digging. The Sandshrew blinked for a moment cutely, its little paws rubbing together as it sat back its butt, and then, shrew. It rose up and I nodded, running after Lucario. Lucario was already digging, but Sandshrew dove in, and was gone in a blur, spiraling into the snow and shifting through it like water. Lucario stopped looking at me and nodding firmly. Yeah, well, none of us know dig, I said, as she snorted at me. Then she pointed and ran off. I could just hear Sandshrew finding something in the snow, as another Pokemon's voice echoed out through the tunnel. Good. Lucario found another, started pawing at the snow, and then Lucario barely ducked back as a massive limb shot out, sending a flurry of snow up into the air. Luca! She shouted and Riolu jumped back as another limb did the same. But neither limb actually did more than start waving around from there. I blinked, massive fist with a weird design on the end that looked like paw prints only. Crabominable, I said, the memory striking me. That's what that weird print in the ice was. I shouted, almost relieved as a mystery was solved. Then I realized it was still trapped. Riolu! Vacuum wave the snow. I think it's just lashing out because it can't see. Rio! She agreed and started thrusting her fists forward, slowly causing flurries of snow to shoot off, and soon the head of the Crabominable was seen. It was on its back, and now that it could see, it stopped lashing out. Crab? Lucario. She offered, and it stopped fighting and instead gave off something like a laugh, as it started working its way out of the snow. Lucario just nodded and then instantly jerked her head to the side. I shifted to follow and Oh, they're so cute. Oh no. I rushed right after Lucario, who took off Riolu right beside me. Vulpix were bouncing and digging in the snow. It looked cute at first, before I realized they were bouncing trying to shift the snow. That wasn't cute, but desperate. Lu. Lucario. Lu. She shouted as she rushed forward, and all three of them shifted, tails raised and on the defensive, but Lucario paid them no mind, racing forward, even as they opened their mouths and powdered snow shot out. It only took a second for her to blitz right past them, extreme speed, letting her blur right past their attacks, but then instead of attacking them from behind like they expected, she started digging at the snow with strong tireless strikes. The Vulpix all seemed shocked, and then flinched again when Riolu and I arrived. We started digging, and I mostly moved snow so it wouldn't fall back in, along with Riolu, as Lucario simply dug so much faster than either of us could do, and then the Vulpix joined us digging at the snow to kick it away, letting Lucario dig faster. Finally, Lu. She gasped, as she pulled what looked like snow right out of the snowbank, but it was another Vulpix. A little one. Hand it here, I demanded, as I slid onto my knees beside Lucario. The Vulpix was placed in my lap, and I could tell it wasn't doing well. Either the avalanche or being stuck under the snow for so long. It wasn't breathing. Small fox, probably not that old, it felt limp in my lap, entire body just lifeless. No. I shifted it, ready to work when suddenly everything around us exploded, ice and snow exploding, and I looked up for just a second. Tyran. Etar. The Tyranitar roared angrily, and instantly, sand started sweeping over everything around us, including me. Vicky, run. We have to go. Papa roared out, and I realized he had caught up with us. Stoutlands both leaping in the snow towards us with Papa on their back. But I had a dying Pokemon in my lap, so I did the only thing I could. I ignored the angry rock type, and focused on the baby in my lap. I tore off my jacket, and threw it over Vulpix, so the sand couldn't hurt it, and bent down to work under the cover. I knew this. Blissey was big on medicine. Small animal, fragile. Both hands wrapped around its little barrel, holding it as flat in my lap as I could. Compress. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. Okay, I could do this. Grab its snout, close mouth. Breath into nose, I exhaled gently only for a second, and then again. Tiny animal, tiny lungs. Then shifted back to compress. Tyran. Roared over me, but I ignored it. Vicky. We have to move. That's a Tyranitar right there. It's going to dash. Papa's cry was desperate and scared, but I had faith in Lucario and Riolu, and more importantly, a life was on the line. I can't. I yelled back, and then went on to ignore him. I started compressing. The cold fur under my fingers was chilling, but everything was cold right now considering how much snow I'd had dumped on me. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Come on. I hissed, demanding this poor thing not die because of, well, me. You. You won't get through me. Papa yelled. I'd been the one that wanted to explore the stupid caves. If I had my team, we'd have beaten the Tyranitar without issue. If I'd done so many other things, this wouldn't have happened. Then the fox twitched, its paws jerking lightly, as if startling awake, and its mouth opened. It coughed, a wheezy weak noise, but snow escaped its mouth, probably full of snow as it suffocated, and it coughed and cleared its airways. I held it gently, sides slowly starting to move, as they expanded and contracted under my hands. Tiny little eyes slowly opened, tired, weak, but pretty little blues met my own. A crash above had me look up, and there was Papa. Standing between me and the Tyranitar, Lucario in front of him. Aura sphere. Papa roared out, and Lucario howled as she charged up a large energy ball. I'd never heard that tone of voice from him before. The aura sphere whipped out and the Tyranitar swept its tail, a massive rock ripping out of the snow to smash into Lucario's attack. It didn't quite destroy it, but the sphere that hit him was far weaker. Again. Lucario. Don't let that Tyranitar move an inch forward. Papa roared out, his voice biting. His bite at this point was probably just as bad as his bark. He was angry. Really, really angry. Once more Lucario shot an aura sphere, and the Tyranitar once more deflected most of it. It timed the stone edge right in time to waste most of the aura sphere, and more rocks were being pulled up. There was a time limit here. Unless Lucario could secure this win, the Tyranitar was gathering resources for more powerful strikes. Riolu! I shouted, still holding the baby, who was too weak to do more than twitch in my arms. Riolu jerked, having been standing beside Papa staring at the battle. We're in this too. Get ready, we're helping out. Lucario! Aura sphere! Papa shouted, and I shouted right with him. Riolu vacuum wave! Push it even faster. Blast him away. There was no hesitation. Not in Lucario, who gathered her energy into a sphere and sent it shooting forward, or Riolu, who shouted right alongside her mother. Energy gathered in between her paws. She wasn't just releasing the blast quickly, she charged it, gathered her power, and then thrust her paws forward. The wave of energy was stronger than any I'd seen from her. Whether she was growing more powerful, or just the idea of fighting alongside her mama gave her all the juice she needed. It struck her mother's aura sphere, and like a burst of high-powered wind, it exploded out over the back of the sphere. The aura sphere burst forward, completely missing the stone edge that rose up out of the snow to try and block it, and there was a flash as the Tyranitar had just a moment to see the glowing energy about to strike him. Blast it! Don't stop! Papa and I roared together, as the aura sphere slammed into the Tyranitar, and then Riolu's vacuum wave blasted through the stone edge that had risen up, and once more hit the aura sphere from behind. Both Pokémon mother and daughter roared in time as their attacks joined into a much more powerful whole, as the attack exploded. The Tyranitar skidded back, snow giving it no traction and then blasting it fully off its feet as it roared in pain, bouncing across the snow and tumbling. Then everything went quiet. Papa and I were both breathing heavily after shouting, and as the snow and smoke from the explosion cleared, Tyranitar was weakly rising to its feet. Tyran! It growled, and then from above. Wowie! A noise screamed from above, a shriek, and howl all in one, and a ray of white blasted down, crossing over the Tyranitar and then right towards Papa and I. Lucario jumped in the way, fighting back against it as it struck her, and everything once more exploded. The temperature suddenly dropped, so fast and so cold that I felt my skin prickle. When the exploded snow cleared, Tyranitar was frozen solid, and a line of spiked jagged ice traced across where the beam's attack had arced across the snow. Lucario was okay, although the attack had definitely hit. She was scuffed up from blocking the ice beam. I looked up, down from the cave was souring something that was amazing, and kinda scary. An Alolan Ninetales. A very angry Alolan Ninetales. A Ninetales that was exhaling air so cold, it was coming out of her snout as powdered snow, and came to a soft landing right atop the Tyranitar. Glaring down at. Well me. Ah man. I did not have the Pokémon to deal with this. Dragon babies weren't going to do much, and Mimikyu and Riolu weren't going to do anything against a Ninetales that strong. Ninetales. It growled, a vicious angry sound that rumbled deep in the Ninetales' chest. Lucario. If I'm facing down a Tyranitar today, there is no way I'm going to be scared of you. Papa roared back, his own voice barking out. And Lucario fell into her stance without hesitation. Yip 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 yip. The cries weren't Pokémon cries, but more like whines as the three Vulpix from before suddenly burst out of the snow. Had they dug in to hide from the Tyranitar? They charged forward in a sprawl, the skulk of foxes tumbling over each other as they raced to their mother? Either way they raced up. She reacted, jumping off the Tyranitar, and landing in the snow and seemingly pushing all of them under her, as she never took her eyes off us. There was a stare down. Papa and Ninetales, the tension only ramping up, when something surprised me. A sandshrew squeaked as it waddled over, the same sandshrew we pulled out of the snow, and behind it was a Sneasel, probably the one he'd helped rescue, and he hesitated, but started squeaking. Shrew. Sandshrew. Shrew. Ninetales growled, snow misting out from her jaws as she didn't seem to want to hear a thing, but slowly a sort cry echoed out. The Vulpix in my arms. I rose up, and started forward. Vicky, don't get close. It's okay, Papa. I responded back calmly, as Ninetales was now growling at me, but Papa wasn't having it. He stepped in front of me, and I could hear his own growl. "Don't even think about it." I hesitated. Papa wasn't playing around, and even I knew when to stop ignoring him, but then he reached out and put an arm over my shoulder. Then there was communication. "Papa and Ninetails, and..." I relaxed, the tension in my shoulders disappearing, the rage in the Ninetails vanishing. "Here, your baby is okay," I told the Pokemon, and this time stepped forward with Papa at my side, the two of us approaching in, and I helped the baby onto the snow, where it whined weakly. Ninetails moved in without hesitation, and curled up around the little Vulpix, the others joining her, as she started licking and checking on it. Then she looked at us. I reached into my bag, there was a tension in the Ninetails frame, she was ready to pounce, but when I just pulled out the good old Oran Berry, the large Pokemon relaxed. "Your baby was under the snow for a while, it wasn't breathing when we pulled it out. It's probably gonna be weak." I offered the berry and the Ninetails delicately pulled it out of my hand before settling it into the snow near her kit, and chewing off a few small bits for the Vulpix to eat. It really was weak. I looked at Papa who was frowning as well. Chapter 125. I stared at the Ninetails, as she tried to get her baby to eat some of the Oran, and the only thing I could think was that it was really fucking cold. No wait, I shook that off. "Focus. Papa?" "Yeah, I see it too," he said, and then he moved, kneeling down, catching the eye of the Ninetails for a moment, but it didn't stop urging its baby to eat. "Your baby needs help," he said, and those blue eyes flicked to Papa for a second, looking heated. "We can help it." 9. It seemed to whisper, definitely a denial before going back to urging its baby to eat. The Vulpix was struggling, and soon even Ninetails could see that. "Okay, you see it," I said, scooting forward until I was nearly touching the Ninetails. She bared her fangs at me, but I wasn't intimidated. "Your baby needs help. We can help her, I promise." I held out my hand, not quite invading her space, but obviously closer than she wanted. "Tails," she growled, but I shook my head, my eyes never leaving the bright blues of the Ninetails. And then, the whimper of her Vulpix struggling to eat had her shift focus. "Ninetails," she whispered, and I nodded, reaching into my bag and pulling out a Pokeball. "Tails. It's the safest way to help her. Listen, I promise I'll bring her back here. Right here. She won't be gone. Maybe a day depending on how long it takes for her to recover." I talked, but I wasn't sure how much Ninetails really understood. Pokemon had a way of understanding words, without really grasping everything. And then finally Ninetails leaned down and nudged her baby, but it was weak. Finally, I reached to capture her but stopped. Right, the Pokeball would teleport. That's actually good. I just needed. I reached into my bag as Ninetails looked on confused as I suddenly stopped, and found it. One of Blissy's markers. I'd got the marker board for her during training so she could fill out information easily, since her flippers didn't work well with small pens and things. And then right on the Pokeball I started writing. "Emergency, take to Pokemon Center." I finished capped the marker and tossed it back in my bag to disappear into the mess of things I didn't properly organize, and then held out the Pokeball. Ninetails nodded, and I pushed it the rest of the way, letting it capture the Vulpix, and I winced as there wasn't even a fight. It instantly locked. Then I stared and not even a few moments later it teleported away. Instantly Ninetails' ears perked up in concern, but I made a soothing motion. "It's okay. She's going directly for help. It's okay. Alright, Trouble, we'll need to get to the Pokemon Center too, even if someone else moves her." "Right. It'll be okay," I told Ninetails once again. "I'll come back here. I promise." She locked her frankly beautiful eyes on me, and then rose up. She was a big fox, and I was kneeling down in the snow, so she towered over me, but she turned and gathered up her other kits. I exhaled. I was worried she'd refuse. It might have, but you got through. Good job. Come on, we should go before that thing defrosts. Papa pointed at Tyranitar, and I'll be honest, the thought struck me. Should I catch it? It was obviously wild, and causing trouble, but Pokemon were like that. They caused trouble for other Pokemon, and this Tyranitar had the right to live here too. Yeah. I decided, standing up and turning away. Think the Stoutland can get us into town? I asked, and smiled as both dogs perked up and barked happily at the idea. Sounds like it. The nearest Pokemon Center was in Malie City, which took a long way back around the island, but the Stoutland were eager to run, and the cold air from the mountains seemed to have rejuvenated them. Honestly, I was just super relieved to get out of the snow and back to a more tropical temperature. Racing down the road, we found the Pokemon Center, and I nearly rushed inside. Nurse Joy. I called out, looking around and not seeing her at the counter. I rushed up, but there wasn't even a Chansey at the counter. Ah, there you are. The voice came from behind me, from the visitor area, and I turned and breathed out in relief. Kahuna. Victoria Ferrous. You got the Pokeball? The one with your message? I did. Nurse Joy is checking on the Vulpix now. Join me. Nanu asked, waving at the couch across from him. I took a moment to breathe. As Papa came in, and took everything in. Good news? Nothing yet. Nanu offered. The man was practically sprawled across the couch, relaxed and looking indifferent, but his eyes were quick. Thank you. I was really worried about Vulpix. It wasn't doing well. I'd like to hear the story. Of course. I agreed as I took my seat. The Kahuna just waited, his uniform half open, and he continued to look lazy. I could see Papa not really liking the look, but I just started talking from the start. We traveled to Mt. Lanakila to see if I could find an ice rock. I began and went through the whole experience. When I mentioned the avalanche, his eyebrow perked up. By the end, he still hadn't said anything. That's what happened? He asked calmly, but there was a note of suspicion in his voice. Yes. I confirmed, as I realized he was testing if I was lying. Then you plan on taking the Vulpix back to its mother? Yes, of course. Ninetales was super worried. All right. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a Pokeball. Vulpix's Pokeball, the marker still stark across the ball. I'm giving you special dispensation to hold this 7th Pokeball. To handle this matter. That's it? Papa suddenly asked, as Nanu was rising up. I'd expect more suspicion. Hala put in a good word for the kid. She carries a Z-ring. If she's the sort to lie to try and capture rare Pokemon like this, or not taking responsibility for injuring a Pokemon this bad, then she never would have gained that Z-ring to start with. He sighed and rose up, stretching his back a bit as he moved. I'll trust you to take care of this problem. Absolutely. Then good job. He said and waved behind his head as he walked out. That guy is the Kahuna, and a cop? Yeah. Dark-type trainer. I said. Ah, that makes more sense then. I guess we just wait then. Not quite the adventure we were planning on, huh? Adventures tend to be like that. You go in expecting one thing and end up another. I ever tell you the full story of my trip through MT Moon? No? Well, picture this. 10-year-old me, Growlithe, and a Bellsprout that I ended up catching. It really helped at the pewter gym. You never told me you had a Bellsprout. Oh, that's because he hated me. It's part of the story. So the 3 of us stop outside the main cave dash. Excuse me? Nurse Joy. I shouted, rising to my feet. Papa had been sharing lots of bits about his journey that he never had told me about before. He'd always been a bit quiet about it until now. It sounded like a lot of fun actually. Turns out Papa was an absolute bad luck magnet. Every place he went something bad happened to him. I think Papa was a protagonist. It was the only thing that made sense. Have you seen Kahuna Nanu? She asked, looking around, and I brought out the Pokeball. If it's about the Vulpix, I'm the one that captured her. Nanu said I can handle the rest. Oh. The injuries. How did they happen? Nurse Joy asked, a bit firmly, and slumped. It was a Tyranitar. It chased us around, and when we entered a cave on the side of the Mt. Lanakila, it caused an avalanche. We dug out a bunch of Pokemon, but Vulpix was the last, and she was in the snow for a while. I see. That does explain what I was seeing. She said, hands on her hips with a nod of her head. Then suddenly she moved in and swept me into a hug. Good job, she whispered, and I blinked in surprise. Oh, it was nothing. It wasn't. If she had been suffocated much longer, she might have. It might have been too much. I had to use CPR. She wasn't breathing when I pulled her out. It really scared me. You. Oh, you sweet child. How did you even know how to do CPR on a Vulpix? Oh, Blissey taught me. She made sure I knew all dash. Oh, I heard about that. A Blissey. Nurse Joy once more grabbed me and I was practically spun around. You're Victoria then? Oh, yeah, I am. I see, you definitely saved that Pokemon's life. I'm very proud of you, she said, and I couldn't help but smile back brightly at her words. That was really nice. Heh. Papa chuckled a bit behind me, which reminded me. So Vulpix will be okay? She was really weak, her mother Ninetails was pretty upset. Yes. Vulpix is resting right now, and she'll need to stay overnight. But we managed to restore her oxygen levels, and with some rest, she should make a full recovery. That's a big relief. I sighed and walked over to the couch and flopped. I felt wrung out. Papa just smiled at me, before looking at Nurse Joy. Can you call our hotel if there are any updates or issues? I will. Nurse Joy agreed, and I instinctively wanted to argue. I should stay here. What if? I let it go. There was nothing I could do, and I have my friends that needed to be taken care of, that would need food, and a good rest would be a relief honestly. Come on Trouble, let's get back. Yeah. I'll be back in the morning, Nurse Joy. I'll be waiting for you, she offered back with a smile. And that's what happened. I explained once again to Mama, as we all ate dinner around a restaurant table. And the little Vulpix will be okay? Yeah. Nurse Joy said she'll just need to rest. Well, that's good then, Mama said, and then she sent me a look. So am I getting a cute fox to play with sometimes? Mama. I gasped, and Papa chuckled as well. I glared at both of them. I'm not keeping Vulpix. It's a baby, an injured baby that needs a mother taking care of it. Or a trainer. Mama. I'm just saying. She denied any wrongdoing with a sip of her drink. Vulpix are cute, and you're always saying you like cute Pokemon. Of course I do. Then when you bring it back, think about whether you want to capture it. I don't. I grumbled, and Mama just sent me a look. Okay, I did obviously, 'cause cute. But it was just a baby. My response once more earned me a roll of Mama's eyes, and she reached out and poked me right in the forehead. Nyeh. My stubborn daughter. Just because it's not your plan doesn't mean it's not worth trying. Make friends with that Vulpix, and see what happens. Don't just count it off from the start. Yeah. You might enjoy having a new friend, Papa added, and I scoffed. I have a whole team I'm training up. Then train up one more. It's not like you'll have issues with an extra back home. I sent him a confused look. Well, yeah, but we weren't at home. You do. You do know we're going home soon, right? What day was it? My clueless look had both of my parents laughing. The flight home is in a few days' trouble. Oh. Then I just shrugged. I could always just come back. And you won't be coming back with your Dragonite, 'cause that's dangerous. Mama denied me instantly, but I very pointedly didn't agree. Dragonite was more than safe enough to make a flight to Alola. But home, huh? Alola had been fun. Not like a journey adventure, but even better in a lot of ways. The warm beaches, and most importantly, a bed to come back to every night, and just. It gave my babies time to grow. To discover more about them. I'll be ready. Well, plane tickets aren't too bad, maybe next year we'll come out for a second vacation. Mama said with a big grin, and Papa just looked at her flatly. I just chuckled at the response Papa gave. Shaking it off, I continued eating. If I didn't finish soon, my team were going to start getting squirrely, so it was best to hurry up. Tomorrow would be another day. And that is the transfer complete. Thank you. I grabbed the Pokeball and clipped it on my belt, right next to the others. It hadn't been an easy choice to transfer someone out, but I was not going to deal with MT Lana Kila again without something to lay down the law. It was just kinda sad that I had to send someone home, but at least Dratini would see his parents. With that done, I headed off, but to my surprise, as I made it to the Pokeride Center, Papa was there. Papa? The adventure isn't over, you know. Planning on leaving without me? Nope. Come on, we'll take some faster Pokemon over to Ulula. I'm thinking Sharpedo. Now that sounds good. You ready, Rockruff? He asked, looking at his pup who barked in response. Rockruff did not in fact like high-speed water Pokemon. Too Stoutland? Not this time. I said at Papa's question, as I pulled out a Pokeball. Come on out. I called, and a moment later there was a big flumph right in my face. Ark ark ark. She barked happily, licking at me, and nearly leaping onto me with how excited she was. Oh, you brought Arcanine this time. Papa said, and at Papa's voice Arcanine shifted and leapt right at Papa, knocking him entirely off his feet and wiggling and licking at his face. Seeing Papa flat on his butt, with Arcanine's legs wiggling in the air as she wiggled against him, had me giggling as Papa grunted and tried to fight off Arcanine's affection to give her an order. Arc, I said PFTT. Ugh, gross. Arcan you. I just kept laughing as he was completely unable to give her an order. Arcanine. Sit down, I demanded, and she stilled in Papa's arms, giving me a pleading look. Don't look at me like that. Papa's gonna give you a big order if you don't stop, I told her, but even as she pouted and whimpered a little, her tail still blazing, I walked over and hugged her tight. Missed you. Arc. Heh. Honestly, I did too. Too bad Arcanie couldn't come over. Sorry, Papa, I said, because honestly that was just the truth of it. I might be allowed with the whole Alolan citizen thing, but Papa was still just a tourist, and Arcanine was still an Arcanine. The only reason I was allowed to transfer my team was because I was an active trainer. Papa would probably just get a blanket denial if he tried. It's fine. He's at home probably spending all his time being lazy. Yeah, that sounds like Arcanie, I said, still hugging Arcanine, face buried in her fur. I stayed that way for a bit. Arcanine was my dog, and even though I'd seen her just recently, I missed her anyway. Alright, Trouble, let's go check the Pokemon Center. I'll get a Stoutland. You can ride Arcanine with me. It'll be faster, I offered, and Papa looked at Arcanine, who just wagged her tail harder. Sorry, girl. Rockruff here would be a bit too much. I'll be able to catch up. It'll give you an excuse to get some running around time ahead of me, Papa said with a wink, and I grinned as Arcanine perked up. Alright, before someone gets too excited. Let's get to the Pokemon Center. Arcanine return. With that we walked over to the Pokemon Center, and the closer we got the more urgency I felt until I was running ahead, and bursting into the center. Nurse Joy, I called out, and flinched a bit as there were actually a few trainers inside. Sorry, I whispered, a bit embarrassed at all the looks I was getting. I'll be right with you, Victoria, Nurse Joy offered, and I nodded, getting in line. The trainers ahead of me were all Alolan, but not anyone I recognized. Soon their Pokeballs were returned, and I was at the front of the line. Here for the Vulpix? I am. Is she okay? Did she sleep okay? She rested quite well, but she's very nervous being indoors. Chansey has been spending time with her to help. Why don't you come back, and we'll see if she's ready to go home? Yes, please. I followed Nurse Joy into the back of the Pokemon Center, and there in a medical room was Vulpix, and Chansey. Chansey. I watched as Chansey sort of danced around with a spoon in her flipper and Vulpix just twisted her head away from the spoon as Chansey brought it in. I don't think that Pidgey is coming in to roost, I said, and then wanted to smack myself because I felt like I just got possessed by Kukui and Principal Oak all at once. Nurse Joy gave off an almost silent giggle and Chansey slumped looking at me with big teary eyes. Sorry, I said, but then I looked at Vulpix. She was looking at me, and when our eyes met she flinched and looked around. She was on a sort of incubator bed that was currently open, probably to keep her internal temperature comfortable as she rested, but she stood up on slightly wobbly legs and ended up turning in circles as she tried to find someplace to hide. In the end it was just her tail she tucked herself into, hiding her face in her own fur. She's very shy, I realized, and Nurse Joy made a quiet nod. Right. Right. Hey Vulpix. Do you remember me? I greeted gently as I moved closer, which the little white fluff ball didn't even react to, too busy hiding. Okay, calm Vicky. I found a seat and sat down right in front of the incubator and settled in. Looking over I saw on Chansey's spoon was a bit of mashberry. The jar was right next to the incubator and I quickly understood the assignment. Your mama asked me to help you, you know? I whispered calmly, and Vulpix flinched a bit, its tail spreading lightly. You were hurt real bad, and she was worried. Vul. She gave a little foxy growl at me, and I blinked. Had I done something wrong? But she did shift. A blue eye peeking through her fur locking onto me. Sorry, I don't know what I did wrong. Are you hungry? If you eat this, I can take you home. Do you want to go home? See your siblings again? Your mama. Vul. It made the same noise. A denial? But her ears were perking up and she slowly uncurled. Vulpix. She called, but when I moved my hand a bit she flinched back. Okay. Not gonna touch you. Chansey the spoon? I asked, and was quickly handed the spoon of food. Okay, I'll put this right here. Can you eat it? I asked, laying the spoon down, but still holding the end. Vulpix snuck a little forward, and I breathed quietly in relief, as she started licking at the mushed berries, and was soon clearing the spoon. Still hungry? I asked, and scooped up some more. Vulpix. She denied, but that was a lie, I could tell. The moment the spoon was down, she snuck up to it, eyes never quite leaving me and licking it up. Tastes good, huh? That's good. You being able to eat is really good, I said, every inch of me wanting to just scoop the baby up and hug it nice and tight. She'd been so weak. Pie. Pix. She scoffed and even whacked at the spoon once it was clean as if she wasn't enjoying it, but her little tongue proved her a liar as she licked her lips. Well, I think even if it's awful, you can probably take another spoonful, right? I prompted, and she pretended to ignore me as I placed the spoon, but only for a few moments. What a little liar. Cute though. Chapter 126. Wool. The Vulpix whined, her paw raised as I held my hand up. Tickle, 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 tickle. I cried out as my hand surged in and wiggled against her side. Voo-voo-voo. She screeched at me, paws scratching and trying to fight me off. I gasped and pulled my hand back, and she surged once more, shifting around in the incubator until her paws were once more still and raised, waiting. Tickle, 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 tickle. I struck and once more she held and screeched. Then as I pulled away she was breathing and wiggling her paws for a moment before going still. Oh, do you want me to stop? I asked, teasing, and she instantly settled on her belly and put her head as far from me as she could, staring away. But her paws were wiggling like she was excited and wanted another round. Okay, I'll just tickle, tickle, tickle. I struck, and she shrieked in delighted foxy laughs. View-view-view-view. She wiggled and tucked around, paws fighting me off, as she bit and nipped at my hand, but only ever playfully. She was a total tsundere. I've never seen a more sun Pokemon in my life. She'd absolutely refused to acknowledge any enjoyment, but she adored play. It had been a complete accident to find this out, but a little accident, moving the spoon around, had her happily attack it before pretending she hadn't. Well, I figured her out quick after that. She loved playing and attention, but wanted to act all aloof. She probably got it from her mama. trying to act like Ninetales, but she was still just a little baby that just wanted to play. I stopped after that, and let her rest for a bit. She might want to play while pretending not to, but she was a bit weak. So it was best to only do it a few times, so I didn't tire her out. You know, this is cute and everything, but are you going to stay here all day and play with her? Papa asked, and I blinked looking behind me, where Nurse Joy and Papa were both hanging around watching with smiles. I'm just making sure she's feeling better, I argued, but it sounded pretty weak even to my voice. Is that so? Nurse Joy asked, practically laughing through her words as she stepped over. You managed more than I could. Vulpix didn't like any contact when I tried. Yeah, she's like that, but it's all pretend, you can tell she like ow. I hissed as she had leapt up and nipped at my hand as I spoke. Wool. Vulpix. Okay. You don't like it. I get it. I offered, hands raised as she growled at me, and then she nodded, huffing a bit as she sat down and raised her little head up like she was a proud Ninetales. Tickle, tickle, tickle. I attacked, and she yelled once again as I fought her off, but she was definitely loving it. Hee hee. Nurse Joy giggled in response, but waved me to stop. I think she's doing much better. Don't you think? Yeah, she's still a bit weak, but she's feeling better. Indeed. Hello Vulpix, let me do a final check, and I can okay your release. Nurse Joy offered, and Vulpix quickly rolled back onto her belly and sat up, pretending not to have just been wiggling in delight at being tickled. Nurse Joy quickly brought over some equipment, and did scans? Tests? I'm not sure, I might know some first aid stuff from Blissey, but I wasn't a doctor, or a nurse. Vulpix accepted it with discomfort, mostly because she couldn't really stop it, but it was obvious she didn't like all the machines, lights, and noises. Poor thing. But finally Nurse Joy nodded. All right. She's ready to go. I do suggest lots of rest for the next few days. Nurse Joy offered, looking at Vulpix as she said it. Then she looked at me, and I just wilted a bit. I'm not planning on keeping her. Yet. Papa added, and Nurse Joy shot him an amused look. Well, be careful with her regardless. I nodded and stepped forward, pulling the pokeball out of my pocket. Ready to go home, Vulpix? Wool. She denied, looking wary at the pokeball. You don't want to go back in the ball? It's safe. Vul. I can carry you back then, how about that? I offered, holding out my arms, but she tilted her head to the side, an obvious refusal. Well, that's not gonna work, Vulpix. It's a long walk, far too long to let you try it. So, come on. I offered my arms once more and even wiggled my fingers, which had her ears twitch a bit, as she rose up, took a step forward and then plopped back down, still looking like she was refusing. Ah. I get it. Gentle yoink. I whispered and scooped her up, which of course she yelled at, but it was playful refusal, and not an actual one. I nestled her in my arms, as she screeched at me a bit, but she curled up comfortably, and I was soon walking out of the room. She quieted down quickly, and was looking around curiously, but I noticed she didn't seem to like everything. The electric lights seemed to make her want to hide, and the motion of people in the lobby had her flinching back. She was a bit of a skittish one. But then once we stepped outside, she eased up, and honestly, considering how warm it was, she was a nice little ice pack in my arms. There, how's that? Feel better? I asked her, and she twisted her head around. Wool. She shrieked in my face, and I just had to flinch as she did that a few times, as if reminding me she was doing this completely against her will, before she settled down once again. Ignoring the odd looks I was getting, I just rolled my eyes. What a little prima donna. Come on out, Arcanine. I called, and as she appeared, Vulpix did more than just flinch, but actually shrieked a bit in fear as she started wiggling, nearly climbing up my shoulder. She was climbing up my chest. Arc? Hey, easy, easy. I hissed as she scratched a bit, but I managed to get her held tight. It's okay, Arcanine isn't going to hurt you. I whispered and looked at Arcanine, a bit desperate. Arc. Arcanine. She barked. Even if it was semi-gentle, it was still quite loud, and before Vulpix could react, she leaned in. Will? Vulpix went from crying to whining as Arcanine licked just once, but Arcanine's tongue was also as big as Vulpix's entire head. Vulpix blinked, her blue eyes flashing, and then shifting to an odd look as it looked like Arcanine had slobbered. Wool! She shrieked at Arcanine, who just watched on her tail wagging a bit, and as Vulpix continued to bark and yip at Arcanine, Arcanine just licked her again, silencing her. Okay. I managed to say before Vulpix opened her mouth and shrieked. Let's just move on. I decided, as the little fox continued to snarl and shriek at Arcanine, who looked like she was loving this entire situation. I just shook my head and climbed up on top of her back, ignoring how Vulpix was struggling in my arms to get down and attack? I don't know, she was such a little princess it was hard to tell how she'd act. Alright, Arcanine. Let's go. That's all I could say for a long while as Arcanine took off without hesitation, leaving Papa far in the dust behind us. I just rolled my eyes. Arcanine. Back where we came, go. I ordered, and she turned, doing a quick U-turn, and we blurred back the way we came. Vulpix, I noticed, was no longer shrieking, instead hiding, obviously startled at the speed we were going. Heh. Arcanine, go fast. I ended up needing to have Arcanine run back and forth as Stoutland carried Papa down the road. The poor Stoutland kept trying to speed up as Arcanine ran past him, but there was just no keeping up with Arcanine. Vulpix slowly stopped being so uncomfortable as we ran around, and soon she was rising up, nearly standing in my arms, as she stuck her head out against the wind. Wool! Vuyul! She cried out into the wind, and I could feel how excited she was through the tension in her body, nearly vibrating. So I made sure I kept a strong grip on her so she didn't fall, and we raced along all the faster, because Arcanine would use anything as an excuse to move. It still took a while to get back to the mountain. Stoutland tried, but he was no Arcanine on full zoomy blitz. Circling the mountain until we hit the right spot, and then just crushing through the snow that built up back to the mountain side to where the avalanche had happened. Finally we stopped, and I looked around. This is where we saw Ninetales before. The sharp ice she had created with her ice beam was still there, but I noticed the Tyranitar was gone. Not a surprise really. Hopefully he learned a good lesson about causing trouble. But there was also no sign of Ninetales. Should we try calling for her? Ninetales? Probably a good idea. Ninetales. Papa yelled out, his voice echoing off the mountain, and I joined in. Ninetales. Our voices echoed out, but nothing was coming back. Vulpix. Vul. Patheix. Vulpix seemed to figure out what we were doing and started screeching along with us. And then, like a sudden blizzard, snow washed over all of us, causing Arcanine to grumble and shake a bit, but then as it cleared, Tails. Ninetales. She barked, stalking closer, obviously very, very cautious as she took in Arcanine. Realizing the problem, I slipped off Arcanine, and Vulpix was wiggling in my arms, so I dropped into the snow and plopped her down. She jumped, bouncing through the snow until she crashed into Ninetales with happy little yips. Ninetales instantly pushed her down and started checking her over, tongue and nose examining every inch of the little fox that was just yipping happily. I relaxed. Sometimes you see something that you just know means you did a good thing. I turned around and smiled at Papa, who was crunching in the snow to approach me. He threw an arm over my shoulder. Good job, Trouble. Thanks, Papa. I hummed happily until finally the Ninetales looked up, and her blue eyes locked onto us. Just as promised. She's gonna be a little tired still for a few days, but she'll be fine. I explained, still not sure how much the Ninetales really understood. Tails. I'll take that as a thank you. I offered back, and she didn't confirm either way, but her eyes shifted. Arc. Arcanine. Arc. My girl was of course wagging her tail. I could hear the snow getting power brushed aside, and then as I shifted to look back. No. Arc. No. We aren't battling. I repeated, and Arcanine slumped, sending me big watery eyes. Ignoring her, I remembered something else I needed to do. Shuffling around in my bag, I pulled out Vulpix's Pokeball. 9. She growled a bit at the appearance of the Pokeball, and I just popped it open and snapped it over my knee, showing it was destroyed. Vulpix is free. I don't capture Pokemon that don't want to be friends. I told Ninetales, as the big fox slowly relaxed. Tails. 9. She replied, and to my surprise walked over, the snow under her paws barely shifting until she stood right in front of me. Those big blue eyes right in front of my face, until all I could see was blue. Bleg. I groaned as she licked me up my face. I think that was a thank you. Gross. So gross. I moaned, fox breath. Bleg. Tada tada. Ninetales chuckled, a chittering noise, but then a moment later. Ark. Arcanine bulldozed into view, her head practically flattening on top of mine as she got involved. Ark ark. She barked and Ninetales jolted back a bit and then growled. Tails. 9. Ark ark. Arcanine, I felt wiggling on top of me, and Ninetales puffed up. Arcanine. What are you doing? I asked, reaching up and pushing my palm against her nose and shoving her back, which really just earned me a bunch of licks on my palm as she fought against me. Tails. Ninetales growled and then leapt to the side, bouncing on the snow like it was a trampoline rather than deep snow before stretching out and growling. Ark. Arcanine scrambled sideways, just bulldozing through the snow like it wasn't there, and spread out. Both Pokemon were challenging. Ugh. Fine. I'm not helping you. I called out, then thought better of it. Nothing too serious. Don't get carried away. Ark. Neathian. The returned growl seemed to start the battle, and Arcanine bolted forward, snow erupting ahead of her, as she hit the snow like a snow plow and just didn't stop. Ninetales had obviously been preparing a move, Ice Beam maybe? But it didn't have time and ended up yelping as Arcanine just blasted right into the fox. Ugh. Why is my Pokemon like this? She's always been like this. Papa reminded me. Pointedly, I noticed not making any attempt to stop Arcanine during all of this. Oh right. So it's your fault. I reminded him, pointing. At Pap just lifted an eyebrow at me. I could have had a nice orderly Growlithe that doesn't cause problems all the time. So it's your fault. It's true. Papa just laughed at my argument, putting a big hand on my head and messing up my hair. Vol? I blinked. Vulpix was looking between the two Pokemon battling and looking a bit antsy. I trudged over and flopped in the snow beside her. It's okay. This is just a play battle. Ninetales is doing really well. I offered. Which was true from a certain point of view. I wasn't giving orders, and she was still battling and not just instantly knocked out against a fire type. It helped that Arcanine wasn't really using any fire attacks, just extreme speed. And bulldoze, I suppose. Pix? Oh, your mama will be fine. Vol. She denied, barking at me with a glare. What did I say? Vol. Vulpix. She replied, huffing and turning her head on me like she had done before. So I of course retaliated. Tickle tickle tickle. I surprised her, and her yipping screech echoed out as she nearly jumped out of the snow at the surprise attack. I couldn't help but laugh in delight, the noise entwining with her own yips and snarls, and then a moment later I realized the battle had stopped as Ninetales had, from the looks of it, shifted to defend Vulpix only to hesitate, and Arcanine, being the good girl she sometimes was, hadn't actually attacked when Ninetales was distracted. Hesitating, I realized that I shouldn't have done that. I lifted my hands, revealing they were empty to the wild mama Pokemon. Of course, Vulpix instantly jumped up and then jumped at me, biting and batting at my hands, demanding more attention. Ninetales, I noticed, relaxed, taking in the sight, her hackles lowered, and instead she shifted, looking back at Arcanine, who was watching, and whose tail started wagging the moment Ninetales looked back at her. 9. She denied though. And Arcanine slumped, looking rather sad that the battle was over. Then something weird happened. Ninetales shifted, turning around and walking up to Arcanine, seemingly looking her over, before her tail shifted and waved, and practically smacked Arcanine in the face, before Ninetales shifted, and walked back to Vulpix and I. Vulpix still trying to bite me was a little distracting, but Arcanine blinked, tilting her head, before barking happily, as the tails waved and ran along her fur. What? That looked very much like, well, a flirtation. But Arcanine was a girl. That should be fairly obvious. I mean, what kind of idiot looked at Arcanine and thought she was a boy? I lived around dogs all my life. It only takes one look at their hips and you can tell what gender. Oh. You're a boy. I gasped, pointing, and Ninetails stopped tilting his head to the side in confusion. Pfft. You knew. I gasped, looking at Papa in shocked betrayal. I thought it was obvious. He's pretty. I wasn't looking. I just assumed, with all the kits. Nope. Male. Papa replied, and I looked at Ninetails in a sudden new light before shifting to look at Vulpix, that was looking at me in confusion too. I'm so sorry. I kept saying. Well, your papa is very handsome, I told her, and she tilted her head the opposite way before yipping, seemingly quite pleased. Then I heard it. Yipping, distant but growing closer, and out from the trees around the little clearing that was created from the avalanche came a trio of Vulpix. All three of them bouncing and hopping through the snow, made me think of dolphins almost. It had that same sort of cute energy. But they raced up and swerved from their father, to instead running to check on their sister. Vulpix fluffed her tail and sat, looking almost regal as she waited for them to approach. Pix. She greeted them, but was instantly knocked over a bit as they started checking on her. Heh. She of course didn't like that and snarled back at them, growling and smacking with her front paw as she attacked each of them. But they just ignored her and cheerfully yipped as they raced around her. It was very cute. Especially since Vulpix was practically in my lap, so I was basically in the middle of a fluff storm. Getting smacked by a million tails as they bounced and danced around me was actually super fun. They were so fluffy. Tails. Ninetails barked, and all the Vulpix stopped bouncing and turned to him. He was just so pretty. Then he patted over and checked on all of them, before nodding, pleased that everyone seemed to be okay. That was a signal for the Vulpix to return to play. I flinched as a fox nibbled at my ear, and soon I had no choice but to pull out the secret weapon. Tickle, tickle, tickle. Chapter 127. I couldn't help but coo as Arcanine was laying in the snow, with lots of cute little foxes leaping all over her. Despite being little ice balls, the Alolan Vulpix seemed rather amused with Arcanine's warmth, and now had multiple of the little kits playing all over her back. She seemed more confused about the whole situation than anything, but the sound of another picture being taken made me smirk. Papa was having fun too. Ninetails watched on, his blue eyes taking in every action, but he seemed rather content. Honestly, he looked super majestic with his tails gently swaying behind him, in this cloud of fluff. I wanted to touch it. The baby Vulpix was definitely tuckered out. She was curled up against me of all places, as Arcanine was too much of an action place, and she had rather quickly tired out. So instead of climbing on Arcanine where she had gotten knocked off a few times, she had crawled into my lap and laid her head in the crook of my elbow, which meant of course I couldn't move. This was just my life now. The whole situation was cute and fun, but as we were all relaxing I reminded myself of why we had come to this mountain in the first place. Ninetails? I asked, calling out to the majestic Fluff, and he looked over at me, head tilting sideways cutely. But I shook that off. We came to the mountain because we're looking for something, I explained, waving the only free hand I had left a bit. It's called an ice rock. It's a big rock that is somewhere on the mountain. It'll feel weird if you get near it. Do you know what it is? Ninetails tilted his head the opposite direction, his ear twitching a bit, and he rose up. 9. That sounded like a yes. He. I pet Vulpix, and rose up. She blinked awake a bit, but I could practically feel her little eyes closing again. She was tired. Poor thing. With a single yip from Ninetails, the other Vulpix perked up, stopping their playtime, and I looked at Papa. Looks like it's time to go. Yeah, he was quick, huh? Alright, let me get Stoutland and we'll follow. Rockruff, who had been hiding with Stoutland. The Vulpix had been a bit too much for him after they teamed up on him when he tried to play. Poor dog. We headed off following the bouncing Vulpix and Ninetails that seemed to just effortlessly float across the snow. So pretty. We entered into a cave along our level, and then into the mossy bright tunnels as we headed through. With Ninetails guiding us though, it felt fairly safe, and literally nothing was going to cause Arcanine issues. So the ride was more peaceful, and more importantly, there was no getting lost. Ninetales ran us through the caves, then we entered into something that was definitely Pokemon made, and also beautiful. A spiraling ice tower in a cave that as we spiraled around led up into a higher section of the caves. Watching the Vulpix yip and chase after each other as we all spiraled around, looking through the glittering almost gem-like ice as we followed. It was definitely cool, and I made sure to take a picture of it, just to show Mama later. I heard it. A noise that was actually sort of familiar. Grinding on ice. The sound of the sand shrew. We entered out of the spiral, and into an ice-covered coven. Was this the same room full of sand shrew Papa and I had seen before? Looking around, honestly it was hard to say. The cave was still coated in those ice pillars, and the way they reflected light and just distorted the entire shape of the cave made it hard to be sure. Either way, Ninetales climbed out into the main room and called out, "Neath the inn." It yelled, and the sand shrew, having noticed us, scurried away. A few then gathered together with a sand slash and stomped up. Slash. Sand. It squeaked, but tried to sound powerful as it seemed to crash its claws together in a threat display. Well, I already had a camera, so I took a picture. This was neat. Ninetales. He growled darkly threatening, and the sand shrew quivered, but the sand slash stood firm. Oh. I didn't want to fight. Wait. I called out, urging Arcanine forward, and the sand slash and sand shrew backed up as Arcanine stepped forward. I guess I could use that. Arcanine. Hell. Arkarkarkar. She howled loudly, the noise felt like it came from everywhere and fire licked off her fur, and the Sandslash seemed to realize the danger. Steel and Ice-type Pokemon were super-duper weak to fire, and Arcanine was bearing her fangs fire exhaling out with every breath. And the Sandshrew took off, disappearing into holes just small enough for them, while the Sandslash backed away slowly until it too disappeared. I hope that wasn't too mean. I whispered, but I also needed to find the ice rock. Besides, we weren't gonna stay here. Probably. I mean, if we found it, people would be all over this place. I sighed, feeling a little bad, but this was still important, and it wasn't like the rangers wouldn't make sure the little Sandshrew and Sandslash were taken care of. Instead, I focused on Ninetales. Now that the Sandshrew were gone, he paced through the ice pillars until he seemed to find what he was looking for and looked back at me, and called out, "Nine. Here?" I asked, looking at the pillar as I hurried over. It was just ice, and I didn't see any boulders in it. Where could the ice rock possibly be? He reached out and nudged at the ice a few times, and then back to me. I reached out, and I didn't feel anything. There wasn't that odd sensation like being around the moss rock. Was it deeper? Is it inside? I asked Ninetales, and he huffed and continued to pat his paw against the ice. Arcanine? Arc. She hurried over, and looked at the ice then at me. Use Fire Fong. Let's dig through the ice a bit. I said, looking at where Ninetales was nudging the ice, and Arcanine did just that. Fire burst from her mouth, burning hot, and fangs of flame formed. Ah, she'd been practicing. Both ways of using Fire Fong combined formed, as she moved in and bit at the ice, but it was mostly just sinking those flaming fangs into the ice while the fire in her mouth melted the ice. Then very quickly she pulled back, tilting her head. Did you see something? I asked her, and she hoofed a bit, but before she could do anything, Ninetales stuck his head into the snow and with a crunch of ice pulled out. 9. He said happily, his tail swaying in the wind, and, ah. I see. Thank you, Ninetales, I appreciate that. I offered and took the ice stone from in between his jaws. He nodded once, looking all proud of himself. I didn't have the heart to tell him this wasn't it at all. I think Ninetales might be pretty, but he might also be a bit dumb. He was a himbo, wasn't he? Yep. I would never be able to get that thought out of my mind. I reached out and patted him on the head, which he blinked a bit in surprise at, but didn't refuse. Well, I turned to Papa, who was taking all of this in while fighting off a smirk. We found an ice stone. I offered to Papa. It's pretty. He offered, but he was definitely trying to stop from laughing. Yep. I offered, rising up and looking around. Was the ice rock in here? I didn't see anything that looked like it. Just pillars of ice, apparently full of ice stones? Well, it made sense why the Sandshrew were always grinding down this ice. They were looking for their evolution stones. And it explained why Ninetales knew about this place. Is this where you got the ice stone that let you evolve? I asked him, and he yipped, puffing up his chest proudly. Yeah, I didn't have the heart to tell him this wasn't what I was looking for. I looked at Papa. I guess adventure over. We should head out. I can tell Professor Kukui that the rock should be on the mountain somewhere, but I don't know where. I don't really want to spend the last few days in Alola digging through the snow. Papa let me speak, and when I was done he moved over and dropped an arm over my shoulder. I'm proud of you, Vicky. This was a fun adventure. Thanks for taking your old man along with you. The last few days hanging out on the beach does sound nice though. It's chilly in here. Yeah. I said, my breath coming out in a fog. It really was, and I was ready for the beach. I turned around to Ninetales. Thanks, Ninetales. I stuffed the ice stone into my bag with my free hand, careful to keep it from touching Vulpix. 9. He yipped, then tilted his head as I knelt down, still holding Vulpix, who was all sleepy. She's tired. Do you have a nest, or someplace for her to sleep? We're going to leave. I explained, and he looked at me. I looked at him. 9? We're heading off the mountain. We can help you take Vulpix somewhere she can rest and sleep. I don't think she's up for walking. He stared at me, and then his head tilted the opposite direction, his little ear fluffs fluttering at his quick movement. Leave? We're leaving? Off the mountain? I repeated, wiggling my fingers to mimic walking, and he just looked at me. Then he reached up and Bleg. His paw slapped right into my face and pushed. 9. What was that for? I demanded, rubbing my face. It hadn't hurt, but he pushed me back onto my butt, and I had Vulpix in my arms. She blinked sleepily at the shifting movement, yawned cutely, and snuggled in. 9. He repeated, and I looked at him and shook my head. She should be with you, I said, already feeling where this was going. 9. He scoffed, looking over at Arcanine. The attention instantly had her perk up and start wagging her tail. Then Ninetales looked from Arcanine, down to the drowsy baby in my arms. He reached out and put his paw right on top of her head, and looked me dead in the eye. Ninetales. I looked away. I didn't come here to catch new Pokemon. Well? Papa asked, and I looked over at him, glaring a bit. I didn't come for this. Surprises are called that because you don't expect them. You've been offered a responsibility. Ninetales is trusting you to do something he can't. So are you going to accept? I looked from Papa to Ninetales. His big blue eyes didn't change, they were looking at me, through me it felt like. Then I looked down at the dozing Vulpix. She was cold against my chest, but soft, a fluffy little cooling pad. Are you sure? I asked Ninetales. The large Pokemon looked at me with those piercing eyes. Then he tilted his head like was confused. Oh right. I scoffed. I couldn't help it, chuckling a little at his derpy reaction. For such a majestic Pokemon he was just so dumb. Only if she wants to come with, I said, and Ninetales yipped in amusement, then bent down nudging Vulpix. Vol? 9. Ninetales. He started, and Vulpix stirred, stretching a bit in my arms, until she was awake, and I settled her in the snow in front of me. The other Vulpix rushed over as well, and settled around, looking at their papa as he yipped the single call, seemingly dragging all the kids' attention to him. 9. Ninetales. He started, and Vulpix I noticed jolted, her fur rising up. Vul. She looked from Ninetales to me, then back to me. 9. Vul. Vulpix. She stomped her little paw. But Ninetales just bent down and pressed his nose to hers. Ninetales. He said simply, then as if in some odd ritual, he sat up very straight, and sort of howled into the air for a moment. When he was finished, he turned into his tails and dug around. Was that AZ Crystal? He had one with him? He had pulled it out of his fluff and then laid it in front of Vulpix. She glanced at it, but she looked from him, from his family to me, and then. She didn't want to leave her family. Obviously. Who would? She turned to me, standing up and looking like she had made a decision, but she was terrified. What am I thinking? I have money. I shook my head. Ninetails. You and your family should come too. I decided firmly, looking at him just as strongly. 9? Why not? I did this same thing with Riolu and her mother. In fact, Papa? Sure. He said, seemingly laughing a bit, as he released Lucario. Lu? Lucario explained to Ninetails that sending me away with his daughter is stupid, and if he thinks she should come with me, he should just bring his whole family as well. I demanded, and she looked at me, to Ninetails, who once more had his head completely tilted to looking at Papa, who was trying desperately not to laugh. Lu. She sighed, shoulders slumping, and walked over, patting me on the head, and then looking at Ninetails. Lulucario. Cario, Lulu. She started talking, and as she did, Ninetails tilted his head again, and all the Vulpix did the exact same thing. The 3 older siblings seemed just as confused. I shrugged and released Riolu. Help explain to the Vulpix why splitting their family is dumb. That they can come to the stable and live there. I told her, and she blinked at me with that same confused expression Lucario had for a moment. She looked at Lucario. Lucario. Lolialu. She ended her explanation with some giggles. She better not be laughing at me. Riolu. She laughed and then turned to the Vulpix, and started chattering. Riolu, none of what you were saying or doing, waving your arms around, and rubbing your stomach sounded at all like an explanation on why you don't split family groups apart. I looked at Lucario, I looked at Riolu. Neither of them were doing what I said. I puffed up and pouted, until Papa settled beside me. But he didn't look at me, he looked at Ninetails. So how about it? You'd be moving your whole family away from everything you know, but Vicky has shown what kind of person she is. I promise we'll make sure you're happy. I nodded at Papa's words, finally someone actually trying to help. I looked at Riolu, who was still talking to the Vulpix. She was definitely causing some sort of trouble. I shot a look at Lucario, who just smiled at me, and didn't respond to my obvious issue. 9? I looked at Ninetails, who was looking very confused. Ninetails. Come along, try it out. If you really don't like it, I'll release you just like I did with Vulpix. But you can come to a safe place, and even train to get stronger if you want. I offered, and Ninetails looked at me, and then, 9. He reached up and plunked his paw right in my face. Was that a yes? Hello? Kahuna Nanu? I called out as we stepped into the police station that Nanu ran, and I sighed in relief as the man was there, sitting with his feet up on his desk, and a paper that he was reading through. I was wondering when you would show up. Going a bit over the top, don't you think? I wasn't going to. I just. Ninetails asked Vulpix to go with me, and she didn't want to go away from her father, and honestly, she's just a baby. But he was so serious about it. So I just told him he was being stupid, and he should just come too. And that's how I ended up with 4 Vulpix, and a Ninetails. Sorry. Nanu looked at for a minute, and then just shrugged. Pokeballs are over there. I'd suggest you take them to the Pokemon Center and have them transferred. You can't carry so many Pokemon at once. Oh. Yes. I'll do that right away. Thank you. He shrugged, seemingly rather uninterested in the whole affair. So instead of taking up any more of the man's time, I hurried over to the 5 Pokeballs, 4 of them normal ones, and 1 a premier ball. I wasn't sure at first about using one, but I hadn't planned on Vulpix, but I had taken responsibility. Heh. It'd be really funny to use her against Lance at some point too. Dragon Flying Master, against an Ice Fairy type? That was a terrible matchup for him. Not that she'd be ready for something like that. Snatching up the Pokeballs, I headed out of Nanu's office, and Papa and Arcanine were waiting. Pokemon Center. I need to transfer them right away. Alright. Gonna keep one? No. Better to send them all together, so they can get used to things. I might send Arcanine too. You want to keep an eye on them for me? Make sure they're comfortable? Arc. Thanks, girl. I whispered, rubbing her face as she leaned into the attention. What a crazy situation. I mean, could I really complain, a whole sulk of pretty foxes? Even if I didn't keep them, I bet there would be lots of trainers interested. Maybe I'll talk to Elizabeth, and see if any of the clan kids want one? But then again taking care of them can be difficult. I mean, Kanto is cooler than Alola, but the clan didn't have a snowy mountain to rely on. I'll need to add something to the stable. Maybe a new cave? With Ninetales and the Vulpix help, we should be able to keep it cold enough. We might even be able to breed more of them. Maybe a cave with a fridge-like door? Something to help insulate the cold and limit the amount of heat coming in? Actually, setting up a location to keep the Alolan form Vulpix could be a really fun research topic. I could teach Kanto about it. Heck, you could probably get an Alolan Vulpix by breeding normal Ninetales and Vulpix in a very cold environment. I'd have to talk to Seras about it. Maybe Kukui as well, to see what he thinks. Could be fun. Well, this is going to be fun, Papa said, and I looked over as I saddled back onto Arcanine and we headed off. What is? Explaining to everyone how you have Ice-type Vulpix. Can you imagine the reaction from everyone back home? Or even your grandmother? He laughed at the idea and I just tilted my head. What? Vicky. Our family made their place in Kanto in the first place with a variant Meowth. You realize that Vulpix is a much more valuable Pokemon, right? They're cute, and different enough that people are going to go crazy about them. I blinked and then just flushed a bit. I'd been thinking of handing them out to the clan, but I hadn't considered selling them, which is what Papa meant. Maybe some eggs if we figure something out. Not that Ninetales was going to be any use for that, but maybe the Vulpix would find a partner? Plus, I had an ice stone. I sighed. I'd have to talk to the Kahuna, we might need more ice stones in Kanto soon. Which might actually be a nice bonus for Alola. Now I had to talk to a Kahuna about this. Probably Hala. Why did my Pokemon adventure keep getting complicated? Chapter 128. Okay, I'll keep an eye on the transfer device. Heh. I'll get Elizabeth to settle them, there won't be any issues with them? Surprised Pokemon can react badly. No. I explained to Ninetales that I'll be away for a few days, but my family will be there to help him get settled in. Thanks Grandpa Roy, I wouldn't even know where to start on setting up a chilled room for them. Oh, it won't be too hard, underground refrigerated areas are fairly common with certain industries. It's not usually used for Pokemon, but well, money can handle minor difficulties. Thanks again Grandpa Roy. We'll be home in a few days, and I'll stop by as soon as I can. If there are any issues, well, we'll handle it. Your Aunt Katie has a Ninetales, so we do have someone that knows how to handle them. It'll be interesting to see this Alolan Ice-type Ninetales. They're really pretty and fluffy, but very chilly. Sounds interesting, he offered with a chuckle. Alright, I'll be sure to grab them as soon as they finish transferring. Right, expensive calls. Thanks Grandpa Roy. Say hi to everyone. Bye. Goodbye. The phone call ended and I relaxed. Now I just had to wait for the transfer process, that slow process that made me nervous every time. I shook it off and looked back at Papa. All done. I heard. Come on Trouble, why don't we head back to the Melee, that way we'll be back with your mother when your Pokemon are transferred back. Oh. I guess that makes sense. I accepted and left the Pokemon Center, and only after being super sure that Nurse Joy would transfer the Pokeball to the Melee Pokemon Center did I reluctantly head back to the Pokeride station and get a Sharpedo. Then Ninetales was like, paw to the face. And I was like, what? And he was like, I accept your offer of being my new trainer along with my lovely family, please take care of us and love us lots. And I was like, duh, of course I'll do that. Then I explained what they should expect, and captured all of them. I'm sure that's exactly what happened. Mama replied back joking, and I smirked at her. It's what his heart was telling my heart. I argued and Mama just smiled and reached out patting my head. Sure it was. Didn't I tell you, you should just capture them? Mama teased, smirking at me. But I'm sorry you didn't find your icy rock. Ice rock. Well, it would be if I found it, so I got to name it. But that's what it is. Mama said, and then reached out and patted my head. I'm sorry you couldn't find it, but hopefully someone else will. Yeah. I said, then shrugged. It's fine. I leaned back into the beach chair and considered what the current situation was. I had another day or so before we left, and honestly, I still had some stuff to do. The rematch with Hala. Olivia had offered me a grand trial, as well. Plus I still wanted to just hang out on the beach and say goodbye for now to everyone. Ugh. I sat up. I'm going to go get some stuff done before we leave. I decided, and Mama gave me a look, before nodding. Alright. Have fun, and don't forget to relax. I will once I'm done. Thanks, Mama. I called out and raced away. Then I grinned and turned around, rushing right for the ocean. Go! I roared, and threw the sixth pokeball on my hip, and a moment later, a roar echoed out, and Blue Heart appeared. He blinked, looking around and then spotting me. I grinned up at him, arms spread as he leaned down, and I jumped into his big cutie face. I love you, I told him, and he gave that clacking noise of happiness he did. Come on, let's go for a fly. I want to talk to Hala about that rematch. He's not escaping this time. I called out as I climbed up onto Blue Heart's horns, and laughed as he started preparing to fly. Kahuna Hala. I've come for a battle. I called out, legs spread and arms crossed. I see that. He muttered, looking up and up at me, as I was backlit by the setting sun. You didn't crush my car, did you? Nope. I made sure Blue Heart came down nice and gentle. I said, turning around and seeing Hala's little compact car, gently avoided by Blue Heart's girth. Ah, that's good then. A battle? Are you prepared? I am. Riolu and I won't lose. Very well. Come, let's battle. He called out, sounding excited, so I climbed down Blue Heart's face, stopped to give him a big hug and a kiss. We'll fly later, okay? Rest for now. I returned to him and grinned at his happy face. It looked like his normal angry face, but his eyes were happier. I trotted after Hala towards his little arena area out behind his home, and quickly took my position. Riolu. I called out, and she appeared, looking around before nodding at the situation. She shot me a look, but I just nodded back. She'd gone through a lot of training. We were ready this time. I see. You both have grown closer, and your spirit burns bright. Yes, I am happy to see such growth. Then he grinned and released his Pokemon. Hariyama slammed into the arena and settled itself. The large Pokemon was strong. Very strong. But that does not mean you will win this battle. I will not go easy. I reached out and swapped the Z crystal in my Z ring, purposefully letting Hala see me switch to the Fightium Z. Neither will we. Riolu was still a brat. We still might not entirely get along, but she'd grown a lot with the late-night training. I don't think she'd ever really had battle training before. Lucario probably babied her a bit. And me only training with special attack, trying to improve on that aspect of my training, had probably left her feeling. Yeah, Alola had been good for both of us. She still wasn't a physical powerhouse, but she didn't need to be. She'd lost this battle last time, and it had ignited some fighting spirit in her. Her night training at Clawmark Hill had turned that desire not to lose, and hardened it. Then let this grand trial begin. Hala called, and I threw out a fist. Vacuum wave. Show your strength. Ryu. She shouted, leaping to the side, and instantly launching the attack with nearly no build-up, just shifting and firing. Only Hariyama shifted, and fake out. Hala called. Suddenly Hariyama looked like he was reaching out to block Vacuum Wave, but a moment later he blurred past and slammed a fist into Riolu. She flinched at his sudden appearance, jerked as she was slapped to the side. Arm thrust. Riolu. On your feet, weave through. Watch the pattern. I called out, and Riolu rolled a bit after being hit, did slow, regained her control and rolled into a flip. Hariyama was charging forward. Its massive hands glowing, it started attacking, and Riolu, ducked the first attack, rolled to the side. For the second, she regained her feet just in time to see the third coming, and this time she brought both fists forward. "Ryu!" she shouted, as vacuum waves gathered. The massive arm thrust was stalled out, hitting the growing wave, and then both were staggered back. "All right. Again. Don't let him set the pace. Ryo!" She gathered her attack and launched it out, moving forward as she fired off the wave, instead of standing while she attacked. Hariyama, without a word, launched another arm thrust, and smashed into the vacuum wave. The attack's connection caused an explosion of wind that sent even my hair fluttering where I was standing. But Riolu was there. "Get him, Riolu!" I called out, knowing she already knew what to do. She charged in, and as Hariyama continued to arm thrust, she juked in, until she was right next to the much larger Pokemon, and then gathered a vacuum wave in her fists. "Riolu!" she called out and started slamming her fists into Hariyama's belly. The hit caused a crack-like noise, as the vacuum wave exploded out, rippling Hariyama's plump belly. But even though the attack definitely hurt, Hariyama wasn't going to let that stop it, and Hala spoke. "Heavy slam. Get out of there!" I called out, but it was too late. Riolu had stayed in, planning another strike, thinking she was too close for arm thrust to hit her, and then her fist with vacuum wave slammed into Hariyama, and she yelped a bit, hitting what probably felt like solid steel. Then Hariyama just fell forward, and Riolu couldn't dodge. Like a wall coming down on her, that was all it took. The pressure wave of the attack hitting the floor washed over me, and I winced. That would hurt. Hariyama pushed itself back onto its feet with a single movement, and Riolu lay there on her back. "Riolu! You okay?" "Rio!" she gasped out, and I winced. Crushed into Hala's little arena, she even had a little contour of her body as she'd really been smashed down into the ground. I realized that Riolu was fairly close to throwing in the towel here. That hit had definitely knocked the fight out of her. "Is that it? Riolu! Stand up! You aren't going to let that hit defeat you, are you?" I called out, throwing my fist out. "Come on! You've trained so much. You aren't done yet." "Riolu!" She grunted and reached out and pulled herself out of the hole she'd been knocked into. "Rio! Lu!" she grunted as she rose up. Yeah, that attack had been. Hala wasn't holding back. I looked at him, and he was sending me a look, as if asking if I expected him to go easy on me. I grinned, "Of course not. Riolu. Let's show them what we can do." "Can you do it?" I asked, and she leapt, surprising me. Straight back she landed in front of me, making lots of room between her and Hariyama, and growling. Yeah, she wasn't done. "Very well. Let's do it." My Z-ring glowed as I brought it up, and Riolu shifted into position. "Very well. Show me what you can do." Hala roared out, grinning, and his own Z-ring began glowing. Not good. Suboptimal, but you know what? Using up his Z-move was worth it. Just had to make sure Riolu survived the attack. Hala and I both shifted, our legs soaring up into the sky before slamming down. "Get ready, Kahuna Hala. I'll show you our strength." I roared as Riolu and I synced up. Sumo stance, Riolu copying me, stomp, then arms up, and spread it out, let the power gather. Double punch forward, connection. Punch. Then punch again. And again. Not just in sync, but together, power gathered, rebounding and growing. I threw my palm forward. Riolu copying me just as Hala did the same, and the entire clearing lit up in power. Hariyama glowed orange, like fire, but for me and Riolu it was different. Bluish, like aura. And as my power jumped into her, as our spirits connected, there was no conflict. We would win. All out. Pummeling. I roared right as Hala did, and Riolu surged forward. "Rio, Rio, 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 Rio!" she shouted, throwing her fists forward, and in a surge the glowing palm thrusts of the Z-move exploded forward. Right into Hala's own. The attacks instantly exploded over and over. The noise quickly washed over everything, but I kept my power flowing. Even as smoke and dust washed over me, blinding me, as the noise completely deafened me. There was only Riolu and I, and our bond. Then it was over. The connection stopped, not cut, or ended, simply, no longer pulling on each other, and I coughed a bit as the smoke finally cleared. Hala stood opposite me, his arms crossed and a large grin on his face. And Hariyama, so massive that he was easy to see even with the smoke, stood tall, in the same pose. Then Riolu appeared. She was breathing heavily. Tired, but standing. The arena was torn up, almost right to her. No doubt Hariyama's Z move had pushed hers back, and yet she had kept it from reaching her. An effective tie, if not a true one. I see. You have indeed grown. Hala called out laughing, and Riolu and I both raised our fists nearly in time. You haven't seen anything yet. Riolu. We both shouted, and probably something similar to each other? You. We really were too connected right now. Gross. Rio. We said to the other and then nodded. We could mess with each other later. Right now was a battle. Alright Riolu. Let's show that this fight isn't over. Vacuum wave. Rio. She gathered power even as Hariyama rose his palms. But I noticed it, a flash as Hala shifted, and Hariyama noticed it, his eyes flashing sideways. Hearing? Hala was doing something with his feet. Hey! What was that? Hala. I demanded, growling as my eyes narrowed. Nothing. Simply adjusting my footing. He offered with a chuckle, and I scoffed. Riolu looked from Hala to Hariyama and scoffed as well. Riolu. Riolu. She demanded, and Hariyama sort of shifted, looking at Hala. Whatever that was, Hala, forget it. Riolu and I will win or lose on our own efforts. I demanded, and thrust my fist forward. Riolu. Let's go. Riolu. She roared in time, bursting forward, her paws darting across the stone arena. Hariyama shifted, and attacked, but there was hesitation. Go all out, Hariyama. These children deserve our best. Hala finally called out, and I grinned. Darting across the stones, Riolu punched out, blasting one, then a second vacuum wave, but Hariyama smacked its palms forward, and each wave was blasted apart. Powerful. He was really showing off now. That's not enough power. Let's go, Riolu. Full power. Charge it and show them. I called out, and Riolu skidded across the arena, bleeding her momentum, but her hands shifted to her side. Her move charged. I could hear the wind start howling, as she kept her paws close, and then she started shifting them, just a little, and with every shift the power in the growing orb of wind grew denser. That's it. Compress it down. Power it up. Let's go. I roared, excited. Riolu wanted this. She wasn't playing but really fighting. Let's do it, Riolu. All the power you can grasp. I roared, thrusting my hands forward, and Riolu roared back. Her paws thrust forward, and the vacuum wave was released, a spiraling tornado that exploded out, sweeping over Hariyama nearly entirely. It was so wide. And then, despite its power, despite her struggle, Hariyama burst through the winds, his palms glowing, and he thrust an arm forward, and Riolu vanished as she was struck. She whined as she hit the ground a few times before rolling to a stop. Huh. I gasped, my heart beating hard, but good battle. I offered, as I stepped forward, my feet kicking rocks and bits of the stone arena as I hurried over and then plopped down next to Riolu. Rii. She whined a bit. Yeah, that looks like it hurts. You want to go back in your pokeball? Or some potion for now? I asked her, and she huffed, and I nodded, grabbing the potion. She rolled over and I sprayed along her back. That's right, she'd been smashed earlier, it probably bruised up. Rio. Lower? I asked before doing so, spraying nearly to her tail before she relaxed, with a groaning sigh. Yeah, that was a nasty hit. Riolu. Yeah. I looked up. Hala had joined us, and Hariyama the big brute looked a little apologetic. But I grinned. Riolu. We lost, but you know what? Look at Hariyama. I said, and she rolled back over and looked up. Hariyama was scuffed and worn. Her vacuum wave had hit him hard, and it showed. Rio. You left a mark on the big guy. You think he's weak or something? Rio. She denied, and I grinned. Last time we couldn't do much against him. We couldn't even use a Z move. Now look. We overcame his Z move. Battled it out, and even left our mark. Hari, Yama. He rumbled, which sounded like a pitiful noise. Ha 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 ha. Hala laughed as he walked over. It seems poor Hariyama wants to go to the Pokemon Center. Hari. He whined at Hala and the kahuna just laughed louder. See, look how beat up Hariyama is. Rio. She demanded, pointing at herself. Yeah, well, we lost. Of course we're more beat up. I said, and then as she was looking at me, I spritzed her nose. Ryu. She whined, rubbing her nose. Heh. I would not call what you had today a loss. If this were a normal trial, you would have won. I know. You were going to take a fall. I pointed up at Hala's stupid mustache. I think of it more as assessing victory, and rewarding it. Pfft. I'm happy you went all out, and didn't just let us win. That was fun. I said, and as I said it I realized it was true. I didn't lose much, and when I had, it had been frustrating. I remember facing Koga. I'd been annoyed at my loss in some ways, even if I had decided to overcome it. Surge had left me feeling like that too. Despite winning, it hadn't felt like a win. But now? Who cares? What was one lost battle? Or 100? It just wasn't that serious. Pokemon battles should be fun, and I think I needed that. Kanto took battle so seriously, and not long into my journey everyone had started putting expectations on me. That I would face Lance, and win. That I would defeat him, and rebalance the politics of Indigo towards Kanto once again, but I wanted to beat Lance, because of what he'd said, which mostly was just to mess with him now, but beating him, or just proving my words then. They were two different things. I dreaded actually dealing with it all, but now? Who cares? Win or lose, I just wanted to have some fun battles, and the expectations everyone else had was a them problem. Alola. It had definitely left a mark on me as a trainer, and as a person. I looked up, the setting Alolan sun beaming down. This place. It was special. Not just because of the tapu, or the Z-rings. Honestly, I'd turn my Z-ring in right now, in exchange for everything else I've gained here on Alola. Kahuna. Thank you. You've helped me a lot. So thank you. Hala took in my serious words with a surprised shift, but he then fell into a happy grin. I am pleased that my paltry teachings could help you. Come, why don't I drive us to the Pokemon Center? I asked, and then grinned instead. How about I fly us there instead? Ever flown on a Gyarados before, Kahuna? I asked, teasing, and Hala's face broke into a smile. Never, but I would love to experience it. Yeah. Come on. Chapter 129. So since I'll probably have a bunch of Vulpix running around, Kanto might start needing ice stones. I explained, and Hala nodded. The two of us were sitting at a little shop, each of us eating a malasada. We keep mining for ice stones rather limited so we don't disrupt the ecology of MT Lanakila. Yeah, the Sandshrew put a lot of work to mine them. I said, remembering how much work the Sandshrew were doing. They do. So we ensure there are always stones for them to find. He replied, and I nodded wisely. But it could be possible to begin selling them in limited numbers. He offered, and I smiled at him. Or, if you don't want them to leave Alola, you could set up a process for visitors to buy them here. Full package Alolan vacation, including a stop at a high-end shop that sells ice stones to visiting trainers? I offered, and Hala's mustache twitched, a little smile. Perhaps. Okay, I just thought I should let you know. I'm going to try and find a way to keep the Vulpix evolving into the Alolan form. I've heard many try such things. Well, I'm super smart. Setting up a cold area for them should be a majority of it, and well, if it doesn't work I guess I could always just use dash. I cut myself off as I remember. Oh right. Everstone. I could use an Everstone and make sure the eggs are always Alolan Vulpix. Oh? Hee hee. Sorry, something I'm going to keep secret for a bit. I said smiling widely, and Hala actually looked interested before nodding. Very well. It's nothing that useful for you, I assured him. I wonder if Alola had a shop selling Everstones? I guess it's not that important yet, and I can probably get some back in Kanto. A few Everstones and regional Pokemon wouldn't be an issue anymore. I wonder if I should capture an Alolan Geodude before I leave. I whispered, but shook it off. Probably best to leave it at that. Hala offered and I grinned at him as I bit into the Malasada. Only once I finished chewing did I answer. Yeah, I don't want to just capture Pokemon that aren't going to be my friends. Besides, I know how to shift Kanto Geodude into Alolan Geodude. Magnetic rocks. Ah, that's true. Hala agreed and we both once again nodded wisely. You know, someday I'm going to show up again and challenge you again. Riolu, maybe Lucario by then won't lose. I look forward to seeing how much you'll grow. Thank you. I replied seriously. I'll make sure to remember what you've taught me. Ha ha ha. This old man hasn't done much for you. I disagree. Alola has taught me a lot, and you were the reason I could learn it. I flashed my Z-ring. I told you I'd respect that you gave me this. And I will. I learned a lot. Also, are you ready for how many people are going to come to Alola to ask about them? I'll probably use a Z move while facing the Elite Four, and Lance. While it's not well known to outsiders, most governments including your own know about the power of Z moves. There is a reason that Alola, despite being so small, is strongly independent. Fair. I said laughing. I'm sure the Tapu help with that as well. The Kahuna chuckled deeply as he held his belly. The Tapu are another factor. I finished the Malasada and turned to Kahuna Hala with a serious look. Thanks for the treat, Kahuna. He chuckled again. It was my pleasure. Go now, Victoria Ferrous, and no matter how far you go, remember the warmth of Alola in your travels. Alola will always be your home. Thank you. I said seriously, even giving him a little Cantonese bow. Then I popped back up and grinned widely. I still need to talk to Kukui and some other stuff, and I want to visit the beach again before I leave. Alola, Kahuna. Alola. He called back as I raced out of the shop. First pick up Riolu from the Pokemon Center, and then probably stop for another Malasada, otherwise Riolu would whine, and then I'd go find Mama and Papa. Tomorrow would be a busy day. So I'll be gone after tomorrow. I explained to Kukui early the next morning. I'd headed to the Pokemon school even before it would open so I could catch Kukui. Just sitting out on the porch of the school and kicking my feet as I took in the early morning Alolan air. I see, so your vacation is over. I'll be sorry to see you go, Vicky. Hee hee. It was really fun, Professor Kukui. I'll miss you lots. Well, I did have some reports to fill out that I was going to ask you to help with. Just some research papers about the Moss Rock. I'll help. You don't mind if I stop in for a class as well? I was going to say goodbye to Lana and the others. Of course. Everyone will be sad to see you leave. I followed him in. I'll have to let Luzman know as well, you know, Dash. Don't even. I demanded and he laughed. I'm joking. Mostly. Luzman did want to talk to you. She mentioned she wanted to send a reward for the TM discovery. Oh, well. Tell her thanks, but I'll be back home. Heh. I don't think that'll stop her. Well, tell her if she can somehow scan for the energy the Moss Rock gives off, I want one. That or send a team to find the ice rock. I couldn't find it. You sure it'll be in MT Lanakila? It could be anywhere, or nowhere. It's there, I know it. I got a bit distracted. Ah, the Vulpix, I heard about that. There was a discussion there. In case you didn't know, you'll probably only get a generation, maybe two before they shift to Canto Vulpix. Not exactly, I offered, and Kukui stopped in the center of the hall. Oh? Well, I'm going to try and set up a cooling area for them. A nice cave or something that'll be temperature controlled. Or at least well insulated so they can keep it as cold as they like. That might work. But, well, there have been tests in the past about this. Have there? Not here, but, well, hang on. He shifted around and walked over to what I realized was Principal Oak's office. After a quick knock, the tanned oak stepped out and grinned. Kukui. And young Victoria, Alola. Alola Principal Oak. Alola. Vicky here was telling me about her interest in regional forms, considering she's going back to Kanto with multiple Alolan Vulpix, and a Ninetales. Truly. Huh. You certainly have luck, and I understand immediately why. Oh, those rich Delcades in Kanto will come begging for such a prized Arbok. I had no idea how Arbok fit into this, but sure. Yeah, so we're setting up an insulated cold room at my stable to keep them comfortable, and hopefully help retain their regional form. Ah, I understand why Kukui spoke to me. Regional forms, or at least Alolan regional changes from Kanto, are my specialty. It's actually my research into it that allowed me to stay in Alola in the first place. Really? Oh yes, I offered quite a bit of information to the kahuna about Dash. Principal, I do have class soon. Ah, of course, pardon my digression. Let's see. Unfortunately, even with a temperature-controlled environment, that isn't the sole environmental pressure. At least that we determined. Regional variances usually stop showing within a generation or two. No matter what we've tried. He admitted sadly. I can gather the research papers we've published about it for you. I'd appreciate that. I said, and then. I think I have a way around that though, Principal Oak. Sorry, it's a secret for now, but don't be surprised if in a few years a paper is released out of Kanto explaining how to counter that. I said, finger pointing at him, and he, just as I expected, grinned broadly. I'll avidly look forward to it. My nosepass will be pointed straight to the future waiting. He said, and then laughed at his joke. How about you get that research paper from the principal, and when you are done stop by the classroom? Kukui offered, and I nodded. That sounds perfect. Thank you, Professor. So you're leaving? But I wanted to show you another great fishing spot. Lana complained, and I just offered her a smile in turn. I'll be back again. But my vacation is over, so I'm heading back to Kanto. Then next time you show up, I'll definitely show you how big a fish I can catch. She exclaimed, finger pointed at my face, and I just laughed. Sure, I'll look forward to it. You know, since you're leaving then. Battle me. Kiawe said, and all the other students looked at him, then at me. A battle? Sure, we can do that. Ah, if Professor Kukui is okay with it? Heh. I think we can have a battle for our class today. Kiawe is certainly fired up. I am. I won't lose again. Turtonator and I are ready for a rematch. Heh. Then Jangmo will be more than happy to face you again. Don't think it'll be so easy this time. He said, and he flashed his wrist. The Z ring hung there, and I noticed the red Z crystal. So I flashed my own, Dragonium Z, already in place. Don't think that'll be enough to overcome us. I'll show you how much I've trained. He replied back with a growl. Alright, you two, let's head out to the battle area. I don't want you Inferno overdriving my classroom to bits. Heh. Kiawe chuckled, but his eyes never left me. Good. We rushed outside, the whole class chasing after us, and then Kiawe and I faced each other. Go. Turtonator. Go. Jangmo. Both dragon types faced each other, and Jangmo clawed at the ground as he saw what was happening. Then he shifted, pounding his claws into the earth in a pattern. A challenge. Turtonator, to my delight, slammed a foot, and then another, responding to the challenge. Ah! That was cute. Jangmo delighted in the response, and soon, Turtonator turned, showing his shell, and the battle was ready to begin. Kukui raised a hand, and dropped it. Flamethrower. Dragon Pulse. I called out, but didn't call out the specific type. Jangmo had more battle knowledge now. The beam of energy shot from him right into the flamethrower and the two attacks clashed, gathering more and more pressure until the move exploded. Keep on it. I roared out, and Kiawe made his own call. I smiled as the battle continued. Jangmo was smart, his battle experience showing, as he avoided getting close. Not just by running away, when Turtonator got close, Jangmo would dash in. Slip under his legs, or around his tail before dashing away, forcing Turtonator to adjust itself. While neither side of Turtonator was where you wanted to be, dealing with the shell, or the front, were both dangerous. Jangmo moved, and switched it up. Turtonator was forced to keep shifting around too. That and we weren't going to fall for any shell trap. Jangmo stuck to Dragon Pulse, which was perfectly effective, and Kiawe once again was growing heated because of it. Honestly, it was obvious how much Kiawe had grown just from our last battle. Earning that Z crystal must have been hard, as it was obvious his Turtonator had gone through a lot of training. Alright, do it, Turtonator. Turt. His Pokemon roared, and Jangmo reacted, blasting another Dragon Pulse to pierce through the flamethrower, but dodge. I ordered, just in time, as I noticed the energy gathering wasn't flames. A Dragon Pulse orb gathered and exploded out of Turtonator's mouth, rocketing out, and the pulse Jangmo had been forming was blasted away, and he only just barely dodged. Learned a new move, did you? Turtonator is a dragon type too. Kiawe called out, and that was true. With the type advantage no longer favoring Jangmo, things just got dicey. Turtonator was a good bit older and stronger than Jangmo, but I just grinned. Alright, Jangmo. Keep it going, fast Dragon Pulses now, don't stay anywhere too long. I called out, and instead of stronger attacks, Jangmo started just plinking at Turtonator, just a second for his attacks to form and fire before moving and getting to a new position. It wasn't as much damage, but each attack was still super effective. This isn't working, Turtonator. Fine, we can't win trying to match them. Let's blow them away. We'll show our Z move, Turtonator. Jangmo. Let's do it too. Full power. Jong. He roared, sliding to a stop, and all four of us faced each other. As I started syncing with Jangmo starting the moves, I watched Kiawe. Inferno Overdrive was a powerful move. So we just had to hit back just as hard. Come on, Jangmo. Show them. Devastating Drake. Turtonator. Blow it all away. Inferno Overdrive. The energy Drake rose up from Jangmo, surging forward as the massive flame ball above Turtonator washed out everything in fire and heat, and then Turtonator pushed the ball forward, and the two attacks clashed. And then, it was over. The flames rippled up into the sky, as purple energy wafted away, having been disrupted, and both Pokemon still stood facing each other. Looks like an even match. I offered, and Kiawe looked over the field and nodded. To my surprise, he stepped forward. The battle was over. I lost last time, but I've grown since then. A tie is fine for now, and next time, I'll win. So, come back and challenge me again. Huh. Next time I'll make sure Jangmo is even stronger. Are you sure you'll win then? I will. He proclaimed, and the students all cheered, the battle ending with neither of us winning as they rushed the field. That was awesome. Sophocles called out, 2 Z moves. It was quite astounding. Lily offered 2 Z moves at the same time. It was all whoosh. She giggled happily at her own exuberance. That was nothing. Hydro Vortex is a way more amazing Z move. Lana offered confidently. Inferno Overdrive is the best Z move. Kiawe argued back instantly, and the two instantly started butting heads. Hydro Vortex is the stronger move. It'd wash away your fire attack. Inferno Overdrive shows my burning spirit. It'd never get washed out. I like Devastating Drake personally. I offered cheerfully, which I knew was just me throwing fuel on the fire. Both of them turned to me and glared, and then got even angrier at my cheerful grin. Alright, let's not turn it into a fight. All Z moves are wonderful. Kukui offered, laughing at the entire scene. Wait. Vicky. You have the Waterium Z. Show Kiawe. Pfft. That won't prove anything. He argued back. Oh, I want to see it. Mallow called out, waving a hand above her head, and I just rubbed at the back of my neck. Well, I've never actually used it. I haven't practiced it yet. Lana and I only got it a few days ago, and I've been kinda busy. I wouldn't mind spending a bit of time helping you get it. Kukui offered, and Lana jumped up. Me too. I mean, don't you have class? Haha. Of course. But learning the movements for a Z move is something everyone needs to know, and it'll be good practice. Everyone can watch and see what it's like for when they get their own Z rings. Kukui's words washed over the class, and to my surprise there was a lot of shuffling. What if I don't get a Z ring? Lily asked, and Kukui responded before I could properly process that. If you earn one, then you earn one, but if you begin your trials, I'm confident that everyone will get one. Even you, Lily. You'll overcome your phobia someday, and meet the partner that is meant for you. I looked at Lily and smiled. It's true. Someday, you'll find the friend that'll be by your side. I said, because I already knew it. See? Now come on, let's get to the river. Do you have a Pokemon that can use it? Kukui asked me, and I nodded. I have the perfect one. I said happily and hurried over. It only took a second for me to grab the Pokeball and throw it. Come on out. My blue heart. I yelled, and Gyarados rose up out of the stream that wound around the Pokemon school, blinking his eyes as he no doubt had been napping. Cute. Oh, it's Gyarados. Lana called out, as she rushed over. Alola. Alola. The rest of the class called out as they caught up, and I could tell Blue Heart was kind of confused at all the greetings. He. He didn't know how to handle new friends. Blue Heart. Today, we're going to show everyone our entwined heart. We're going to do a Z move. It's gonna be fun. I shouted at him, nearly jumping up and down as I was so excited. He bent down, a growling noise from his throat. Not quite an agreement or denial, just a noise as he leaned in. Ah. I reached up and hugged his face tight. He wanted hugs. That still surprises me every time I see it. Kukui offered, and I turned my head so I could see him while still hanging onto my blue heart. He's perfect. I proclaimed, 'cause he was. Alright, well, when you're ready. Yes. Okay, blue heart. Nice and tall now, okay, and watch closely, we need to match our moves together, to connect our bond. He sort of tilted his head, but did as I requested. Alright, let me show you the stances dash. I can do that. Lana called out, interrupting Professor Kukui as she bullied her way to beside me. Haha. Alright, it seems just like a real surf. Lana wants to wash over all of us, let's see it, Lana. Right, sorry, Professor. Now you just start like this. She stood, legs spread and arms at her sides. Then brought both arms wide and crossed in front of her. First position. She called out. So I faced her and did the same. Her crossed arms rose up above her head, then spread out, returning them back to her sides, then rushed forward, but not like fists, like with some moves. Instead she waved her hands, and it looked like fins. I copied her, but instantly realized my floppy wrists were wrong. Show me how to do that? Yeah, like this. Just keep your wrists flexible, it's not about power, but motion. Lana described, and I noticed Kukui watching on as he stepped back with a big smile. Lana must be doing a good job. I tried it again, and managed a semblance of the flowy motion. Then she grinned, returning to the pose before, doing the fin hands, and then, that's pretty. You have to move like a wave. She called out, starting from her left, and waving both hands together, along with her legs and hips. She turned herself into a wave, and I could practically taste the sense of a Z move there. She didn't have a Z crystal, or a Z ring, and it still felt like she was about to use Hydro Vortex. So I nodded, once more doing the fin hands, into the wave dance, and I'll try that again. This one was kinda hard. Most of the Z moves so far had been more about strong movements, punches, or something. But this was even harder than the super splits for all-out pummeling. You can do it. Lily called out from the group, and soon I had a full cheer squad which made me get all hot in the face, as I was messing it up, but I could do it. Hands up, into cross, into expanding hands out. Fin hands, into wave dance. That was the movements for Hydro Vortex. I practiced it for a few minutes, until at least Lana wasn't stopping me each time to correct me. Okay. Blue Heart. Dance with me? I asked him, and his eyes blinked once as he shifted in the water. I grinned. He liked me putting it like that. He rose up, and as I took my pose, I began. He followed along, his body shifting. He didn't have arms, or legs, but that wasn't the point. It wasn't needed. I felt it. Cool water, flowing between us, a splash of a wave on the beach, and the same wave deep below, flowing up. I flowed into the fin hands, and our connection surged. Water splashed on heavy rocks, our souls reached out for the other, and our bond connected. There was no need to struggle, there was no disruption. Blue Heart was my heart, and I was his. I flowed into the dance, and as I did the water shifted around him. He felt the power growing and almost didn't know what to do with it. But I did. What better move for Blue Heart and I, than the one that truly solidified our bond in the first place? It wasn't a move we'd ever used in combat, but, well, waterfall. I roared out, and then thrust my fist into sky. Hydro Vortex. What is the sky, but your infinite ocean? I roared out, and then as all the water in the stream around the school was almost rapidly sucked in towards Blue Heart. As he turned his head into the sky, I laughed, but it wasn't just me. It wasn't because of what was about to happen. It was because with my bond so entwined, I felt Blue Heart's laughter deep in his heart as he looked towards the sky. And then like an explosion the hydro vortex formed, and instead of grabbing, instead of surging out, or exploding it rose, deep into the sky, and Blue Heart raced right up it. The water stretched high, a funnel so blue it washed out the sky as Blue Heart once more reached the sky. Roaring out over all of Melee that the sky was his. Oh man, that's really tiring. I realized as I flopped back onto my butt. I'd just used a Z move with Kiawe, and now another one, but... Oh hey Professor? Why yeah? He asked, obviously distracted as the water vortex was surging so high into the sky. We should probably run. I said a bit urgently, and then he looked up and his face slackened in shock. Run. He surged up and helped me up, but all the kids soon ran off as the water, the entire stream that had been gathered up into a vortex reaching the sky, started falling. Ha 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 ha. I just laughed as I was carried under Kukui's arm, and it felt like the sky fell. Chapter 130. Ptee. I laughed as everyone looked around. That was not what I was expecting. Lily called out, the girl was definitely annoyed. Flicking the water from her hands. All of us were completely soaked. The wave of water had come down, and washed us all out. Seriously. Kiawe grumbled, although considering he ran around without a shirt on it wasn't like he was all that wet. That was certainly a water gun to the face, wasn't it? Kukui offered as he pulled his hat off his head and flicked it around, trying to get the water out of it. I'm sorry, but he. I just laughed all the louder. What's up with her? Mello asked as she seemed to realize I was giggling like crazy. Did you plan this as a prank? Lana demanded, puffed up, but I shook my head. No. He. It's not like he. I giggled more then pointed to the sky as I was laying flat on my back laughing. Way above, among the clouds, Blue Heart streaked around doing spirals and rolls. Look at how happy he is. I gasped out. Oh wow. Huh. Kukui offered as he shaded his eyes as he looked upwards. He does look happy. He was laughing all the way up the spiral, and I felt it. I gasped out, fighting off the giggles that felt like they were infesting me. It just felt so ticklish. Blue Heart had great laughter. He does look like he's having fun. Lily offered after a few moments, most of her previous anger gone. Yeah. He sure does. I whispered, smiling as he seemed to just be enjoying being in the sky. Blue Heart was such a good boy. So yeah. It was a bit of a thing. I explained to Mama and Papa after returning to the beach. It had taken a while for Blue Heart to finally come down, and I'd said my temporary goodbyes to everyone at the poke school while I waited. That sounds terrifying, Mama said bluntly, and then just nodded, turning away from the discussion entirely. I'm glad you had a nice time with your Alolan friends, and this water Z move sounds terrifying. It's awesome. You'll have to show us someday, but for now, don't forget to enjoy your last day of vacation. Is there anything you want to do? Well, I thought about going to visit Pony Island. Not sure you have enough time for that, Vicky. Papa offered and I nodded, but I don't think I have enough time to really explore it. So I figure I'll just spend the day on the beach, and then visit some of the shops. I haven't picked up any souvenirs for everyone back home. I figured I should get something for Gram, at least. That's a good idea, Mama said, returning to the conversation by shifting back and facing me again. How about we go shopping together? Sure. Want to go now? I think if I start going into the ocean again, I'll probably be busy for a while. Sure, come on, Trouble, Mama said as she rose up, and Papa was smart and just waved us off, as he settled in the sand with Rockruff. He knew if he came he'd be carrying bags. Smart guy, Papa. We wandered through the main street of Mele, stopping at random shops, some of them very touristy sort of places, but some were full of handcrafted stuff. While exploring, I ended up finding the perfect gift for Gram. A pottery place that had cute little hand-painted images of Pokemon. I quickly snatched up an Alolan Persian looking cozy curled up. Your grandmother will absolutely hate it, I agreed, almost giddy. The look on her face would be so good. Mama rolled her eyes. Make sure you get something she might actually like too. I will, I agreed, and we wandered around the little shop for a while. I found a Lurantis that had a bunch of Fomantis that I picked up as well for Ivy. She actually didn't know what Lurantis would look like, so it'd be a neat gift for her. I even found a cute Lycanroc that I'd get for Kiba. With that all packed up in bags and little styrofoam cases to keep them safe during travel, we continued on. I checked out all the shops, even walking into a stone shop. There were sections that had ice stones, but there was a note saying they weren't selling them to non-natives. Neat. I couldn't help but mutter as I looked over their array. Some of the ice stones looked super pretty, practically sparkling. Ah, the lovely Alolan ice stone. You won't find anything like it anywhere else, the shop assistant offered, the woman walking over and looking proud. Yeah, they're really pretty. They are. Unfortunately, they can't be sold unless you're an Alolan. Oh, I am, technically, I offered, showing her my Z ring, which had her blink in surprise. But I don't actually need one. Ninetales already gave me this, I said, pulling out the ice stone that I'd gotten. Oh, that's a lovely stone, the shop assistant gushed, and I nodded happily. Yep. I'm going to keep it until Vulpix is ready, I offered, although not mentioning I wasn't sure which Vulpix would end up with the stone. I had to spend a lot more time with the foxes to figure that out. Well, if you already have a Pokemon in mind for it, I won't ask if you want to sell, the woman offered with a wink. Are you looking for something in particular? Not really. Mostly just browsing, to see if I can find souvenirs for everyone back home. Oh, that's sweet, and I see you already have some things. Well, I'd definitely suggest taking a look at our jewelry section. I hummed and did just that, letting the lady lead Mama and I around the entire shop, showing off expensive pieces, but, none of it was cute Milotic scales, so I was pretty uninterested. Nothing else caught my eye either, but it was just the fun of shopping with Mama that I really enjoyed. Let's go, I called out in delight as I held on tight. Gib, I heard from Gibble as I held her under one arm, while the other held onto Blue Heart's crest as suddenly we surged forward. Since this was the last ocean day, I of course had to take Gibble out to play. Blue Heart split the waves and Gibble was looking around as a wave of water flowed over our heads before we were under. It was a burst of bubbles and white water, before it cleared and there was just nothing but open blue seas. Still holding on tight to both Pokemon, I looked down and saw Gibble was wiggling in my grip, but not to escape. She was moving like she was swimming. How cute. Then we rose back up, and as we burst free I took the chance to catch my breath, and I could hear Gibble doing the same. Just before we flew down and sank once more beneath the waves, I leaned out a bit, letting Gibble really feel the water flowing past her, and that made her little attempts to swim grow stronger. She definitely liked the feel of water flowing past her. Then we broke the surface again, and I laughed once I caught my breath. Gibble was looking around, wondering where all the water went. Let's stop here, Blue Heart, I called out, and he started to slow, until he was basically circling lightly, and I held out Gibble and then leapt. I cannonballed into the ocean, with Gibble in my arms, and then as we stabilized, I mostly just let her go, just keeping her balanced with a free hand. She looked around, as she floated around. Blue Heart circled close, deep enough I could climb out onto him if I needed, and kept us safe, as Gibble had a chance to really see how deep the ocean went. I giggled when I brought her under the water. She just reached out for the depths, and made her little grabby hands. Yeah. Someday for sure, my little Gibble. But first, let's see if we can teach you how to really swim. Up until now Gibble's ability in the water was questionable, but that was what we were out here for. Not just her though. I grabbed her and brought her back to the surface, and she made a cute little noise as she reached the surface and exhaled and started sucking in air again. I crawled up onto Blue Heart, and then tapped my pokeballs at my waist. Jangmo-o, Riolu, Brave and Mimikyu all popped out on top of Blue Heart's scales. Alright everyone. I know not everyone likes it, but I want to make sure you can all swim. Jong. Jangmo-o instantly whined, but I shook my head. Nope. Everyone has to swim around a little at least. Even you. I demanded, pointing right at Mimikyu, who was trying to hide on top of Blue Heart's crest. Kook. I already thought about that. Which is why I found this. I pulled out a piece of cloth. One I went exploring to find, and then just cut a few holes in. KKU? Hee. It's a Mimikyu swimsuit. I know you don't want to get your disguise wet, so you can slip this on, and leave the disguise in my bag, until we're done. The polka dot piece of cloth with 2 eye holes was once something else, but now with a bit of work, it made a perfect bathing suit for my Mimikyu. Kook? I'm sure. Try it, for me? He slumped, and reached out to take it, and I watched as it brought it inside. His disguise wiggled around a bit and then reached up and slipped it off. The swimsuit didn't have a cute Pikachu or Milotic theme, it was just a sort of ball shaped with the bottom tightened with scrunchy material. It actually let me see Mimikyu's shape nearly clearly for the first time, and he was obviously uncomfortable. Come here. I offered arms wide, and he leapt over after a moment's hesitation. I hugged him tightly as he fell into my arms. I love you, Mimikyu, and this is just a fun disguise so you can go swimming. You don't have to wear it for long if you don't want. Okay? Kuke. So let's go swimming, okay? I asked him, and he looked towards the ocean, where thankfully some of my friends had already jumped in. Riolu was doggy paddling around, Brave was just floating, but she'd sort of spread herself out on the water. Well, she looked like she was okay, so I'll just leave that. And, Jangmo-o. Jong. He whined, his feet tippy-tapping on Blue Heart's scales as he sort of looked at the water but refused to jump. I sighed, as I looked over everyone. Thankfully Mimikyu jumped a moment later, and hit the water with a splash, and soon I noticed he was sort of wiggling around in the water, getting some motion. Yep, he could swim. Now it was Jangmo-o's turn. Gibble was thankfully more than happy to sit on Blue Heart's scales half in the water and play for a bit. Come on, Jangmo-o, I need to know if you can swim for emergencies. Just a little bit. Jong. He whined, and I rolled my eyes as I headed over. What's wrong? Are you scared? Jang. Okay, I'll hold you, okay? He hesitated a bit, looking at the water, but still started tippy-tapping his feet. He didn't want to admit to being scared, huh? I reached out and picked him up, which he side-eyed me, as if he expected me to just jump in. Instead I sat down, slipped my feet in the water and kicked a bit. It's not scary. Look at everyone here. Jang. Just a little, I'll be right here, and I'll even swim right with you the whole time. His feet flapped a bit as I held him to my chest until finally he made a whine noise. Jang. That wasn't okay. I grinned as I slipped a bit further down the scales, and soon his tail touched the ocean. Jaong. He whined, his tail whipping out of the ocean, and he flinched. It's not scary. Look. I reached down and cupped the water. It's just water. You drink water all the time. Jang. He whined, so I reached down and moved his tail a bit until he was in the water. Jang jang. He muttered. See, no issues. Then I slipped a bit more off Blue Heart's scales, reaching up to hold myself on. I was basically floating now, and Jangmo reacted, flinching at first, as the water flowed around him, but he calmed down after a moment. Jang. Yep. Now let's do some swim practice. I'll hold you, but try to float on your own, okay? I asked, and he nodded slowly, as I reached under his barrel, and let him just float on the water. Heh. He wasn't too bad. His limbs doggy paddling just like Riolu, and soon he seemed to get the hang of it, even able to do it completely without my help, not that I stopped. I didn't want him to be afraid, I wanted to build his confidence. And with that, everyone was able to play. Soon Jangmo slipped out of the water, but he ended up resting on Blue Heart's flared-out tail fin, slightly in the water, but mostly out of it. While that was done, I focused on Gibble. Okay, just hold your breath, okay? We're gonna go under. Gib. That's not holding. I reminded her as I held her out, and I waited for a few moments, for me to feel her inhaling, and then holding it, before we dropped. Gibble was basically like a big airbag in the water. It meant she sort of floated, but not really in a controllable fashion. Her horns, I think, were partially air-filled, or hollow, probably hollow. But they left her a bit unbalanced in the water, and sort of floating wrong. But a little actual training should help, and if it didn't, Gibble liked it, so it was all well worth the time. We stayed out there on Blue Heart Island for hours, swimming around, until everyone got tired. But as we lay on Blue Heart, everyone soaking in the sun, I felt it was a perfect end to the last day of fun on Alola. Tomorrow would be the flight home, and from there? Who knows? Do you have everything? Yes, Mama. You checked under your bed, we aren't going to be able to get anything back if you leave it. I checked every inch of the room, since I wasn't sure if some of my Pokémon might have left something somewhere. It's clear. I offered, throwing a thumbs up. Good, good. Mama said, relaxing. Are you ready? Yes. She said, reaching up and stroking Meowth's chin. While Mama had gotten permission to own Cabbage, Meowth was sort of a gray area, so I was still going to send them home the other way. I held out a Pokeball and Meowth looked at me, almost scoffing before leaning down and letting herself be captured. Oh, is it time? Papa asked, coming out of his room, with his bags, and Rockruff padding at his side. Rockruff had been sleeping in Papa's hotel room, hadn't he? I rolled my eyes at my parents, not even trying to hide their claiming of new Pokémon. Yep. Come here, Rockruff. I need to capture you, and when you get back to our home, we'll meet you there. Ruff. He charged forward, much more accepting of me than Meowth, and nosed the Pokeball. Just like with Meowth's ball, it locked, and then teleported away. Alright then, let's get to the Pokemon Center. You said the Kahuna would bring them? Yep. Hala mentioned that he'd bring any Pokemon I happened to catch today to the Pokemon Center. I said, grinning at how Hala had winked at me, or at least tried to. The guy's eyes were barely open. And then all three of us were there. Ready to leave Alola. Mama was the first to react, actually sighing. While I do want to go home, I'm going to miss this place. We'll have to take another vacation here next year. Well, maybe a year after that. This was an expensive trip. Papa offered, looking a little nervous. Oh please, with how many Milotic the clan has, that won't be an issue. Or the fact our daughter just collected an entire pack of rare Pokémon. Skulk. Groups of foxes are skulks. Mama sent me a flat look that I just grinned at. That's right. Papa agreed, smiling. Although they aren't canines, they are in dash. Dear. Yes, my love. Papa said, leaning in for a hug, and I noticed shutting up. As I was saying, with the Vulpix breeding that I'm sure will start, the Milotic, and anything else our daughter thinks up, I expect it'll be possible. Besides, look at her. She wants to come back. I do. I have to finish some more island trials. I only really did Hala's, but I still want to beat him with Riolu. There, see, your daughter needs to finish her island trials. Mama said, sweetly, like chocolate wouldn't melt in her mouth. I'll think about it. Papa said, hiding laughter as he kissed Mama on the cheek. Alright, let's go. I nodded, and we filed out, dropping off our keys and things at the front desk and then heading to the Pokemon Center. We still had a few hours until our plane left, so we walked in and settled in to wait. Thankfully it wasn't long. Hala stepped into the Pokemon Center, carrying 2 Pokeballs, and instantly noticed me. Alola young Victoria, and Mr. and Mrs. Ferrous. I see you caught 2 completely random Pokemon on your final day here, Victoria. Yep. Totally random, they just wanted to come with me. New friends, you know? New family is important, yes. Hala offered, smiling smugly. Thanks, Kahuna. I responded much more seriously, then. I do appreciate it. You are of Alola now, entrusted with much more than just 2 of our island friends. You have my faith. Thank you. I whispered once again, touched with how open Hala had been with me. Now let me get these 2 sent off. And let's see. I should offer some wise words for such a parting. Always eat a full meal, he said, and it took me a moment to realize he was either being serious or showing no signs of laughter. Good advice, Kahuna, I said, trying not to laugh. And with that, Hala turned, handed the Pokeballs to Nurse Joy to be transferred to Kanto. I dropped off Blue Heart with her as well, as he couldn't join us all on the plane, and Kahuna Hala said his goodbyes, his wide back blocking out the sun from the door of the Pokemon Center as he left before us, and that was it. The last time I'd see Hala during my Alolan vacation. He'd been nice. It was sad. We left for the airport, and soon we'd be back in Kanto. It's cold. Why is it so cold? Hurry! I whined as I shivered running down the steps of the plane to get into the terminal. Phew! That is cold. Breathe that air though. I did miss it. Papa called out standing on the exit of the plane and just breathing in, only to get slapped by Mama behind him. Hurry up you dolt, she stammered a bit. Even with our jackets on, it was still really cold compared to the warmth of Alola. What? I can't hear you over how amazing it is to be home. Papa yelled out, almost embarrassingly loud, as he reached out and pulled Mama into a hug. Why I said hurry, not grab me. My lovely wife. He called out teasing, and I realized he was purposefully messing with Mama and I. I'm going inside. If you get sick, that's your fault. I yelled out and raced for the building. I wasn't made for the cold. There was snow on the ground and I was wearing Alolan summer clothes. I raced inside, and thankfully it was warmer, if not warm, but before I could stop and just start grabbing warmer clothes, I looked up and grinned. Gram. There's my granddaughter. She called out. She'd been sitting at one of the seats, with Persian resting beside her waiting. Moments later I swept in for a hug and snuggled up. I'd missed this. Even if it was cold. This was home.